Sorry for the delay, everybody. What is going on, people? Glad to see you guys get here so early. I know you didn't come to see me. You came to see the special guest. That's what y'all supposed to do, right? But while you guys are in here, please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Also, we have Dr. T's Cash App and PayPal right there at the top. So go ahead and donate. Because you know whatever we're going to do today with Dr. T is going to be a treat. Plus, there's more information for those who have been living under a rock about Dr. T. It's all in the description box. So some of the things and some of your links or what have you. So they're all available. Right? So glad to see you guys here this Sunday afternoon here. Right? Wow. Everybody's liking this. You know what? People that I think they were enjoying that music. So you guys like fusion in this space? No hip hop? I'm joking, y'all. I didn't know y'all were into the fusion. Y'all go to jazz concerts and hang out with the big boys? Oh. Anyhow, I forgot the name of the people. Okay, this is just to help, my supporters, what have you. It's Larnell Lewis. So you can just click in Larnell Lewis, and there is no specific name of that song from what I got. Yeah, so it was somewhat of an exhibition at a drum off, right? Wow, we finally got Malika up in this building. Hey, fam, what did I do to get this brother up here? Let me take care of him. But anyhow, we're gonna get started, y'all. There's a lot of things that we need to discuss. Let me see here. Let me hook this brother up here. Da-da-da-da-da. Boom. Got to show my manners here. All right. So the topic that we're going to be getting into is the black male image in politics. That was something that I think that, we have to start bringing in our experts to talk about things that we kind of overlook. Very important things. It doesn't really, you don't have to be like a political consultant or have some kind of degree in political science, what have you. We're just speaking from what we have observed over witnessed or have observed, or maybe something that you might want to say different. But anyhow, without any further ado, we got 21 in the building. Please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. We're going to bring in our special guest over here, none other than Dr. T. Hasan Johnson. How's it going, brother?
Going well, man. How you doing?
I'm doing just, making the rounds here. Right. Okay. So anything you got coming up so we'll know what to support and where to go and what to look for before we can get started. Matter of fact, even if you want to introduce yourself briefly for those people that haven't really clicked on any of these YouTubes in a minute.
Yeah. Dr. T. Hasan Johnson. I'm faculty in Africana Studies at Fresno State, and I do the ONYX report here on YouTube. I also created the Institute for Black Male Studies, which you can find at instituteforblackmalestudies.com. And there's also a corresponding YouTube page for that, where I interview Black men who are doing work in the interest of Black males. You know what I mean? So that's it. Just trying to improve the quality of life through critical analysis for Black males. And so that's kind of where that is. As far as anything upcoming, not at the moment. I mean, I do have some big things in the works, and it's not close enough for me to announce them. But other than that, man, I'm just starting the semester. So, this grind between and doing content, right. Sometimes, especially at the beginning of a semester, man, that's a hard balance for a few weeks.
Yeah, I had to take a break. It was like, it's too much for me.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes your body will force you to take a break even when you're not even thinking about it. You know what I mean? But it's it's coming together, man. So
Okay. What about that? You getting that heat over there, or is it just over here?
brother, I'm in Fresno, man. This is we got
Bruh,
111 degrees yesterday.
damn.
About to get 114 later this week. So it's it's
Wow.
it's desert temperatures, man. In the winter, it can get down to the 20s, and in the summers, it is in the over 110. So
Jeez.
yeah, we don't. A lot of people don't leave their house very often. If you drive through Fresno in the summer, it's like a ghost town in certain parts because you don't go outside unless you have to.
Yeah, I got that air conditioner on, and I don't care how high it's going to cost me.
You know, you know, real man. I just had my whole system replaced. I'm like, hey, it is what it is. Every year somebody dies from the cold or the heat. Every year,
Yeah, man. I for sure. I definitely I'm drinking a lot of water. Let's just say that. So
right?
I guess this probably your best excuse to stay hydrated.
And shout out to Ray, Malika, Aquateki. Shout out to my brothers who I know they're splitting their attention right now
I know, man.
between
Yeah,
two channels. So shout out to my artisan brothers.
yeah. Even the art beats artisan came up here too, right? Yeah, he used to have his I kind of had this at 2 o'clock, so I didn't want to like conflict with his stuff, but he started making them longer, so I couldn't even help it anymore. I was like, all right, you know,
I
because
see
this is
in the chat. Yeah, what's up, man?
yeah art beats. Yeah, because I do the Sunday talk chalk to bring in serious people like yourself to keep it short and sweet, and then people can enjoy their day on Sunday or watch other streams or what have you. My long days are Tuesdays and Fridays.
Okay, okay.
Starbucks channels.
All right, all right.
Come in
You
and
shut it down to come over. Wow, artisan. Damn, I'm honored,
wow,
man.
bro. Yeah, yeah. I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Well, we got everybody. Well, we got 39 people here, so you know, I mean, I've been going after brother Dr. Hasan Johnson for a while, so he was, we finally got him, so I was like, okay, let's do it.
Man,
Um, yeah, so we're going to be getting into the black male image in American politics. And, I already said in the beginning that, we just, from our observation, because some people do try to hold us as though we know all the CNN people and the Fox News people, and we're sitting there in press conferences, and I know that, we're not really coming from that
right,
angle. But as black men, we know what is misrepresenting us and things that are representing us. So anyhow, so you ready for some of the questions?
let's do it.
All right, so before we get started, you guys please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. um and hit the Cash App button for Dr. T. Hasan Johnson is right there at the top. It's pinned at the top. It's the Cash App and the PayPal. If you want to do Venmo and all the other stuff, that's all in the description box. So we have all that. If anybody want to put those in the chat, if you want, then so be it for those mods that are out there. Because I'm going to be drawing, looking at questions, and taking care of the host. I mean the guest. All right. So, first question we're looking at, like, for example, we got people like Tim Scott, which is a Republican, Cory Booker. They're often in positions to speak on black issues. One would say, America is not a racist country, and the other one gives you the all-inclusive thing or what have you. Uh, for some reason, which kind of, I think over the years gave black male leadership a bad rap over the years in American politics. My question is to you, based on what you have seen over the years, how was the black male presence and image utilized in American politics?
Well, I mean, in my assessment, man, it's always kind of been very token oriented. We've kind of been dragged out by both parties to, like show poodles, to
Hmm.
demonstrate that they're diverse, and we've kind of been used along those lines for generations. Now, that doesn't mean that you didn't have black men who were trying to take what little position they had and apply it to something that may improve the quality of life for the black community. I do think you have that. I'm not willing to flush over a century of black, participation, political participation into nothing. I do think you had those that were comfortable being paid off to be, show poodles, but I think you had those that tried to do something with their position. But there's how much power is involved in that has always been a questionable thing. And I think it's, in many ways left us in a position where we depend now on symbols and performative gestures and
Hmm.
instead of actual power, instead of actual decision making that works on behalf of improving the quality of life for those in the community. So I think that's definitely been happening, and we need to, and that kind of falls on us. We need to demand both nationally and locally a different political ethic, and
Hmm.
that and that's not going to come about unless the people require it. And so
Right.
I think that's part of the conversation. But I think overall, in terms of your question, it's been, symbolic performance. I mean, even
Right.
the election of Obama, for many, you have a lot of folk, black folk included, that voted for him because of the optics, and we
Yeah.
get it. We get it. We never saw any black candidate that had that much of a chance. I mean, I grew up in the, in the era where in the 70s and 80s, if you saw a black person on stage debating, presidential candidates, that's all they were there for. They were there for, the symbolic representation. They were there to really kind of prime, issues and questions that the real candidates would, respond to. And then you never saw them after that. And we kind of understood that. With Obama, you saw someone that actually, continued to make it. And it was like, okay, he's still on the stage.
Right.
The surprise I had when I was like, we down to two candidates and he's still on the stage. But again, it came down to we wanted to see someone that looked like us in a position of authority, and now we have to change that thinking, and we have to really have a list of issues that are pertinent to us. And I'm saying this, in regard to black men.
Hmm.
I've been saying this for the longest. Shout out to the Roger Report, you in there, Toya, in there. What's up? I'm listening, LaShawn. Sorry, I just had to acknowledge my
Okay.
Tampa. Appreciate that compliment. But it's time, and I think one of the things that really got me looking at politics again has been the manosphere.
Hmm.
In many ways, politics really just it got sickening to me to a certain extent. I'm an independent. In many respects, I tend to lean left because I grew up poor. But at the end of the day, I just really just saw a lot of symbolism and not a lot of actual, change, not a lot of actual application coming into the manosphere. I'm seeing black men communicating with each other, articulating issues that we've never had the vocabulary for.
Right.
We're creating it. I mean, we were given a vocabulary that applied to white folks, that applied to women, and none of it exactly fit. And then we were measured against whites and women and told we were deficient in whatever the given area is. Like we recently saw with this black therapist, right?
Right.
We didn't have the emotional intelligence, but she's measuring us by a standard that women created. And
Yeah.
so as black men start to articulate who they are, what they're interested in, and what their issues are, what their experiences are, it gave me hope. It gave me excitement. It gave me energy for what we can produce and what we might achieve in this space.
Mhm.
This space is pregnant with possibility.
Yeah. That's why I'm
When I
sticking
started
around
looking
too.
at politics, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's it. That's why I'm sticking around too.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, no, it made me look at politics in a whole new way. It made me look at politics as in terms of what it can be for us rather than what we've been told it's supposed to be. And
Right.
that's the thing that kind of gives me some motivation right now.
Yes, sir. And please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. And shout out to Malika for the super chat. Appreciate. Oh, I got to do my little sound effects, huh? Let me pull out old Betsy. Yeah, I'm Rick James. All right, and shout out to the Roger Report for the super chat. Yeah, I'm Rick James. We didn't even give Denise her props. Denise, my sister over there. Thank you for coming through, Denise. Yeah, that was one of your fans. Right there. That's from Latin Splainings. Make sure that everybody knows who she is. Yeah, you got a lot of fans, Doc.
I've seen her in the chat. Shout out to you. Hope you're well.
And we got Aquateki, Spain Man in the building. Aaron Peters, LaShawn Jefferson. I call LaShawn Prince's songwriter.
Oh,
he's very the way he talks. I'm like, God dang. Anyhow, we got Tampa Supreme in the building. Kareem Austin in the building. I hope I didn't leave anybody out because I think he called everybody else out. So
we got Dead Set in here. Joe Average Brother. What's up, y'all?
I didn't see that. Oh, Dead Set there. Joe Average Brother. All right. Okay. So we cooking right off the bat here. All right. So, and again, please hit the Cash App button for Dr. T. Because he has a lot of things to do, and I can understand. I'm just an adjunct professor. This brother's the full. This brother, the full deal, man. That's my goal, by the way. Once I'm done with the high school thing, I want to be able to do the university level. So
okay.
But whatever fees in the stirs, I'm good. So
I've taught every level, from elementary to middle school to high school to college to grad. And I can tell you, I doubt my students are a whole lot different than yours. But
yes, sir. Yeah. I'm a man. We gonna talk because I got a whole new thing on my plate, so I gotta. But we'll talk. So the next question is: most of our Black leaders have been appointed without the input of Black people, as you know. I mean, for some reason they pop out of nowhere, and I'm like, wait a minute, he looks good or she looks good, and it's like, okay, let's just vote for him. They Black. It's like, where did he come from? My question is, how do you think the political machine selects these, like, at least black male leadership? How do you think they're going by these selection process?
I think it's a shrinking group. I've actually written on that the political go-to group in the Black community for some years now has been Black women, and I think one of the major filtering institutions is the academy.
Oh.
Right? I think we presuppose that a high-level candidate has a college education. So when you look at the data going back to 1976, Black men to this day still have about half the degrees Black women have.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, when you start seeing candidates more often than not, you're hearing about Black women candidates going into electoral politics. You're not hearing as much about Black men. There's always a few, stand-ins, but I think the academy is one of the major filtering institutions. And when you factor in, everything from high school graduation rates to college graduation rates, it's not surprising that you're going to see more Black women, and there already are more than people probably think. And the numbers of Black males are still, diminishing in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got to look too at who the political audience is. Who are the people willing to pound the pavements? Who are the people willing to active in party mobilization on a low level, grassroots level? It tends to be women. And here's the biggest thing. I think you're talking about Black men in politics. We are extremely disenfranchised. You know what I mean? From state to state, if you're dealing with Black male incarceration, it more than likely impacts voting.
Mm-hmm.
So I've said this before. We vote to the second highest degree on the in the Democrat Party, but we're never given any credit even within the party. They still identify Black women because Black women have the highest voting pattern for the Democrats. We have the second highest, but no other group really experiences voter disenfranchisement the way we do due to incarceration. So even though you have Black men who have a diminishing, kind of presence, a diminishing real estate in in partisan politics, they're still active and they're not being credited for it. So I think some have taken to, just kind of being um, bored with it all, just kind of being, disenchanted, and so I think that's, and then you see the party's attention, at least the Democrats,
Right.
focusing more and more and doubling down on Black women. We definitely saw that in the last presidential election when they were really pushing our current vice president. Of course, they
Right.
doubled down on that, and that was an interesting thing because I think in many respects that's sort of split Black men and women. I mean,
Yeah.
the white gender split happened more with Clinton and what's his name? Damn it, I was just about
Um, Bush.
Bernie.
Oh, Burn. Oh, you mean the wife,
Yeah,
Hillary? Okay.
so Hillary Clinton and Bernie. I think that was the white gender split. When Hillary played her little games and kind of ousted Bernie in that respect. For us, you had a split. I think with the current VP, because her track record in the Bay Area wasn't kind to Black folk as far as incarceration, particularly Black men.
Yes.
And so, folks wanted us to be excited about her the way people were about Obama. And, it was, I think it was just questionable. A lot of Black men voted for her. A lot of Black men abstained from voting altogether because they really didn't see it. But I think part of that is because we haven't really articulated a Black male politic yet. I don't think we have. I don't think we've ever really thought about it. I mean, I've asked people in the past, how many of you have ever seen a Black male political agenda before? I'm
Yes,
almost,
sir.
yeah, I've never seen one.
I mean, you want to hit some of those points while you're on it, or do you want to say that for another time?
Well, I'll ask you if I can pull something up in a little bit, but I just
Okay.
wanted to say, for the most part, at least rhetorically, we talk about Blackness and the Black community in a very kind of 1970s esque manner. We talk about community. We talk like when you see Black men being interviewed about what their political desires are, we talk about the community. But when
Right.
you hear Black women being interviewed, they articulate their political interest as a specific demographic well.
Right.
They've been learning to do that for the last 4 decades. We don't. We still operate with this kind of quasi communal focus, and you really don't hear Black men strongly advocating for policies, maybe outside of incarceration, but for
Right.
policies that are specific to Black men. You don't really hear it because we don't know how. We've not been taught that. We've not made that decision. We just kind of followed along with what others pressured us to do. But I've argued that I think we're in a moment where we're experiencing what I call a Black masculinist turn. And there have been several, from Ice Cube's conversation with the, Cocktails and Queens,
Hmm.
to everything that happened lately with this Black therapist. I think there's been a number of moments where, even the vice presidential election, well, not her election, but the election with her on the ballot, I think these have each been small little Black masculinist turns, that men have been forced to say, wait a minute, something isn't wrong, something isn't right here, and we're slowly starting to realize that that the cards are stacked against us in a way we hadn't anticipated, even communally, intra
Hmm.
racially.
Hmm.
We're seeing that there is a heavy concern about Black women and girls advancement, and not very much about Black men and boys.
Yes, sir.
And it's forcing us into a corner that many of us have not been prepared to be in. And I think the even Kevin Samuel's death, when we saw, certain women dancing in the aisles, it was like, wait a
Right.
minute,
That was
wait a
weird.
minute. His counterparts, if you will, his Black feminist counterparts, or his opposition, as it were. It was required reading in college classes. I had to read bell hooks. I had to read, these people who I would consider Kevin Samuel's opposites among Black women. In the last 40 years, they had professional standing. They had doctorates. They were all, bolstered by Oprah and Terry McMillan. They had status in society. And they said the most misandric shit about Black men.
Right. I remember.
You got 2 years of a guy on YouTube, and you're dancing in the aisles at his death. I never heard one black man dancing in the aisles because Bell Hooks died. Never heard it.
Not one.
And I think for black men, it was like, okay, even for middle of the road black men that they were like, well, Kevin said a few things that were kind of cool. I don't really follow Kevin. I think even those men were like, damn.
Right. Tell us how you really feel.
Y'all could hate us that much, but we've watched movies and shows and interviews. And I mean, we've seen decades of pure hatred and bile toward black men. And we never got to that point. So again, I consider that a black masculinist turn. I think there are moments where black men are starting to say, you know what, that's a problem. And, I can see how we're going to have to ask different questions. Like even since 2020, I've been a big, proponent for us studying things like grants and fellowships and who's getting them. And we started to see in 2020, this whole focus on mom and pop businesses. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
Concerned about mom and pop businesses going under. So they were creating these little opportunities to fund small business. And when it came to the black community, they would only talk about black women.
Right.
And then even brothers that I knew who were applying for these funds were going out and finding black women, sometimes family members, sometimes business associates, to be the face of their business so they could get access to grants and fellowships to advance their businesses.
Yeah, I know somebody that did that.
Go ahead.
I said I know somebody that did. I know some people that have done that.
Yeah. And then when it came to, then you started to see these, various cities that were, giving out, funds for unemployed, poor, single parents. They didn't ask about, black male single parents, and they didn't offer it to any. They would choose specific people, and overwhelmingly they'd be black and female. So you started to see these kind of practices. And then you had Goldman Sachs coming out with the $10 billion push that now Latina women are trying to get in on.
Mm-hmm.
You saw MasterCard, Visa, Google, all of these major corporations started pooling funds specifically for black women, even though the numbers would show you that, especially when you account for incarceration, black men are doing worse. So we have more entrepreneurial businesses, but we're doing worse. But there's been no support targeted at black men. And then when you start to look into these corporations, you found that it was highly educated, white-collar black women in those corporations who were creating an interest and a focus on targeting dollars toward other black women. And black men just kind of stood there and didn't really say anything until the manosphere started pointing out this is happening. So it's not, there are portions of the manosphere that are all about relationships and sex. And that is what it is. If black men are interested in it, I'm not going to decry that. But
right.
There are also portions of the manosphere that are saying, look, take your interest and focus on black men and boys and apply it to what's going on in the world. When you start looking at these dollars that are designed to re-engineer society, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing here, when you have just Goldman Sachs applying $10 billion to just educating black women as far as STEM, that's a re-engineering gesture.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're left out of these re-engineering gestures, you may not feel it now, but your child may feel it. In a decade or two. That's where you see it coming. And if you can see the foundation of that now, we need to actually start having a different conversation. And I think that's where my push is coming from. So I'm not having this conversation as a political insider.
Right.
I can give you a background of any of the prominent, political figures. I've been so disinterested in that for years. But I am saying there's a lot of potential for a collective of men and women who agree with that platform to build a platform that's specifically around the development of black men and boys and have a specific political agenda around doing that. I think there's a lot of power, and it doesn't have to be a large group. It just has to be an organized group.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be surprised how you can. I mean, I've already had political candidates under the table reach out to me and ask me questions about what black men are interested in. I don't even have 30,000 subs on YouTube, but political candidates are calling and saying, hey, what is this thing you guys are talking about?
Right.
So if I have 30,000, what happens if you have somebody at a Kevin Samuels level who's willing to be that focal point, or if it's more of a collective gesture where a number of us get together and we say, look, this is our agenda. It doesn't have to be a lot of people to start it, but we just got to start.
And shout out to where they at? We got no one in the building. Appreciate the super chat. And hell, then we also got let me see. And shout out to Dead Set Anime for the super chat. And did I get everybody on that one? Oh, and we got DJ CD2 for the super chat. Had to bring out the old Rick James one here.
Oh, Dr. CD, appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we, hope everybody is enjoying the content. And shoot,
Mr. Shoot, thanks.
Yeah. And then we got Mr. Suge too. Mr. Suge over here. Appreciate the super chat. I'm Rick James. I think they just want to hear Rick James, Doc. I'm joking.
That's
But
right.
and then please hit that like button, that people that are coming in, and share and subscribe. Also, Dr. T. Hasan Johnson's PayPal and Cash App is at the pin at the top, so we don't have to keep throwing it in the chat, but it's right there in front of you. So click on that and donate to this brother for his time that he's spending with us and giving us all this wisdom and these gems. But I thought about this. It's not on the questions, but do you think, like, okay, we had the TD Jakes thing sounding kind of red pill like with that viral thing, but do you think black male politicians may be going in a direction as well, or are they just, or that's a fantasy?
I think they haven't been given enough incentive to know that they can. But they're, because look, coming out of the academy, I bore witness to how many black male professors wouldn't say anything publicly.
Right.
And now I'm starting to notice a slight change in that. But truthfully, I notice more of it with black male graduate students who are, kind of they're in the pipeline to come out with their degrees, and they're far more interested in this conversation than their older peers. So as far as, political figures, I wonder if it's similar. I think there are black men that are interested, but it's a question of how, because, canceling is a thing now.
Right.
And for a politician, being canceled is, can be a death knell in your career, as is for others. So I think people are looking at this and they're trying to figure it out. And when it comes to even people like me, I think there are brothers in the academy that are watching my channel, not necessarily because they fully agree, but because they're like, wait a minute, you mean he hasn't been canceled yet? How is he still teaching? How is he still, I think we're finding out space for this, where black men can speak their minds and not be eliminated. And as black men are figuring this out, I think that will continue to grow. But that's, I think, been one of the biggest fears is being canceled, being attacked, because one of the first things you hear when you're critical of feminism and or the behavior of certain women, the accusation isn't to address your arguments. It's more ad hominem. It's just to suggest that you hate women and that's the end of the discussion. It's like, no, I don't have nothing to do with hating women. What's going on here is ridiculous and it needs to be called out. And so I think, I think more men are starting to figure that out. And I'm noticing, men and women are coming to my channel and they're helping. I wonder if you notice this as well. They're sending you articles that affirm things you've said. They're sending you videos, because I think people are starting to realize, what, even if I don't agree with the entirety of the manosphere, but then who the hell do you agree with in their entirety anyway? But
right.
Even if I don't agree with the entirety, it doesn't mean to say that there isn't a point that's being made that I can agree with. And that's one of the things I get. How can you support Kevin Samuels? He's this and that, or how can you support, anybody they name? And I say, well, it's not about supporting everything they've ever said, but these are the bullet points of what I can support. This is the overall movement that I identify with, that really is about improving the quality of life for black men and boys. And I'm unapologetic
Right.
Who's offended by that. If you don't like it, I don't care. I'm not going to lose any sleep about it. Doesn't mean I agree with everything and everyone that said anything about it, but it does mean I agree with the overall push to acknowledge that Black males really do live an entirely different quality of life, even from those in their same household. Even as a 13-year-old, I living with a sister and a single mother, Black women, I lived a different reality that I couldn't even talk to them about. My mother to this day doesn't know how many police cars I've been thrown over just for walking to school.
Right.
I wouldn't tell her because I didn't want to stress her out. She was stressed enough as it was. My sister had a whole different set of concerns. Like, women's concerns are different. She might be worried about, where she parks in a dark parking lot at night. Granted, different experience. But she wasn't worried about, that police car that was driving by her to the same extent. She really wasn't.
That's right.
If I got pulled over because they said I was speeding, she wasn't worried about whether or not she was going to survive the encounter. You know what I mean? We just had different sets of concerns. And when I started to watch TV or sit in classes in undergrad or graduate school, I didn't really hear my concerns being articulated outside of the generic, the generic ones. We heard about it, maybe incarceration. That's about as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things that drew me to Tommy Curry's work. When they really started focusing on the vulnerability of Black men, there were so many areas outside of incarceration that haven't really been talked about in the academy, let alone in discourses like these. And so it just really began to shift my focus and push me to kind of figure out, all right, how can we talk about these things and what can we do about them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, we can't do anything about them until we can at least name them. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and you're in a good position right there, boy, because that's because there's not too many professors that cover your topic in a lot of these universities, correct?
Not a whole lot. A lot of them, but here's the thing: you see them at a conference and you get a beer in them, and you find out that there's very little difference between you and them. And sometimes it'll be the most feminist cat that you think hates everything about what you're saying. When you get into a conversation off camera, and this cat tells you about how he got divorced, how he got his kids taken from him, or how somebody stole, you get him talking, you're like, wait a minute, man. What are you really not? That's why when you look at a TD Jakes has been doing this shit for years. He will drop some red pill little, moments.
Right.
If you watch him long enough, this isn't new. He does it, but his primary audience is Black women, I would argue.
Right.
So he's only going to do so much of it, but he's done this in the past. And he gives them just enough to keep them from running out of the church.
That's true.
They knew. Tyler Perry even. Tyler will drop the occasional little tiny red pill and you'll be like, wait, what? But they're only going to go so far with it because their primary base is entertaining Black women. But my only point is that it is out there. And even the men that seem like they are opposed to everything you're saying have experienced the stuff we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they know it's not all fabrication. It's not all things that can be dismissed or deflected. It's just that's not where their money is.
Right.
So when given a big enough audience, you'd be surprised what they say.
Right. And shout out to Aaron Peters for the super chat. Appreciate you, fam. Was it Aaron Peters? Yeah, Aaron Peters.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought about that. Now I don't know because I haven't really researched this, but as far as how they, how we observe how they always pick these Black male political leaders or what have you. Do you think that has always been their method of selection since Black men started getting into American politics after slavery, or has it changed up over the years? What do you think?
I especially going through Jim Sedanius's work and looking at the way that much of the contestation around race was targeted at men, at Black men to be in particular. I just don't see a white male political run institution bringing in its opposition. I mean, what they
Right.
do is they bring in black men that already agree to a very particular agenda and won't buck the line. But again, I come out of Africana Studies in the academy. Black
Mhm.
Studies. Black Studies wasn't created by the academy. It was created by black students who demanded it. So you get now they're underfunded. Most programs are extremely underfunded. I'm not going to say Black Studies was well celebrated, but my point is that it was developed in response to students. It wasn't developed because it came out of a framework where they invented it. And now there's been a lot of contestation back and forth about the purpose of Black Studies and what it should be, and institutions invest in it for their own purposes. But there's a core group of scholars that are interested in the lives of Black folk. And I'm saying if that can happen in the academy, I don't see why it can't happen, most particularly for Black men. But it is a war, and
Mhm.
that's not changed. In every area we find ourselves, we are at war on one level or another. I don't care if you're talking about entertainment and media. I don't care, politics. We are at war. Whatever you're going to push to do, there are going to be those that want to control it for their own purposes, and you got to fight for your own autonomy to keep the fruits of your labor to your benefit. So when I advocate for Black men via the manosphere to go into politics, I'm not saying that we're going to be well received and supported off the bat just because we exist. It's going to be a damn war.
Right.
It already is one.
Mhm.
So that ain't going to change. But at the end of the day, if nobody else is batting for us, then we got to bat for ourselves. I mean, that's just how I see it.
Right. For those people out there, please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Um, now, um, Now, regardless of the political leanings, it seems that the gynocracy, shout out to BGS with he coined that word in his space, has no issues. I mean, it seems like the gynocracy has no issues with these Black men in positions. I mean, I don't know if anybody else have noticed that, but does their selection process of Black male leadership tie into the gynocracy? Does it help with, I guess, the gynocracy staying the way things are and keeping those women or what have you in those particular positions?
I think it's much the same as it is in the church.
Ooh, go into that.
You have a pastor, because that's one of the things when you hear Black men accused of having an oppressive patriarchy. One of the examples you inevitably hear is the church. I mean, because the churches have mostly male pastors. But the thing about it is, these male pastors run churches that are predominantly female, right? And much of that is rooted in kind of Christian dogma as far as the position of male. So I think in many ways, the Black church has sought to connect with white society via kind of framing our leadership structure, our belief structure in a way that whites can digest. I think that plays a role in it. But Black men do not control the church. They don't. We just have symbolic figureheads in
Right.
positions. And I think in politics, it's much the same, because any Black male political figure who represents the Black community is your primary political base. Well, the majority of outspoken people that you need to answer to tend to be women.
That's
So
deep.
I think
That was a gem.
there's a framework there where they have to answer, or at least believe they have to answer to Black women, or else they'll be replaced. So even though they're positioned there, by elite whites, at the end of the day, they still have to cater to their own demographic, and that tends to be viewed as Black women. So, again, Black men need to make their presence felt in a variety of different ways. And we got to figure out what that is. I was saying the same thing about this a couple of years ago, because I used to hear people say things like, when BLM was really out on the streets, 2015 and beyond, they would say things like, well, Black men are too afraid to come out here. It's like, nah, we just never really found much changed, with that type of protest for Black men. I mean, I went to
Right.
a couple of BLM, protests, and I participated. This was early on when they first, kind of started. And I would kind of low-key interview brothers and ask them why they didn't participate. And the answer I got back most was like, yo, I got warrants. I can't be, they up there, confronting cops, and brothers are like, I got warrants. And the funny part is, the first brother that told me that, I realized, because I was just coming from a protest, I realized I had a warrant.
Wow.
I had a warrant for a speeding ticket, right? And I was just like, yo, what exactly would it take for me to get locked up? And we have a different relationship to prison, like to jail than women, like because I would meet women in BLM that would say things like, well, yeah, I'm gonna get arrested tomorrow at the protest. And then, I'm gonna get out about 5 and I'm gonna cook the kids some dinner and then I'm gonna go do this. And I'm like, wait a minute. You just said you're gonna get arrested and you're gonna be out by 5 to cook dinner for the kids. Do you know if
Yeah.
I get locked up right now? I've known brothers who got locked up over traffic tickets that they didn't pay and they didn't get out for a month. They were only supposed to spend a weekend. They spent a month. They lost apartments. They lost jobs. They lost
Mhm.
the kids. We just have a different relationship. So, standard kind of street protests, Black men process that differently. But that doesn't mean it needs to be less valued. We just have to determine what our method is, whether it's protest, whether it's political participation, electoral political participation. We have to figure out what our method is going to be based on the conditions of our lives,
Right.
the realities of our experience, and not use other groups as a measure of how to do things. We need to determine how to do things based on what suits us. And that's a conversation I'm willing to have.
Yeah, and why does the average Black person have very little questions about our Black male leaders today? I notice nobody really checks. I ain't gonna say nobody, but most people don't really check these people's credentials.
Anybody like who are you thinking about?
Like for example, what's his name? Cory Booker. Right. You ask the average person, okay, how did he get in office? And say, oh, he's just a good speaker, and he served office and blah blah blah. But it's like, okay, well, who was behind him? Or any of these people. It's like, how are there? And I'm not saying Cory Booker is a bad representation of us or whatever. I'm not saying that at all. But the average person, you probably had to be from New Jersey maybe to have a little bit. But this guy is on the big stage as far as being a senator. We have, I think the only one that I know that puts something out there to where we shouldn't question too much was Warnock, because they were saying that, hey, he's a pastor at MLK's church and all these different things. But I still think that we, on average now, not, on average, we don't talk about people's credentials enough to even to send a message that, hey, how did this person get in office, and what can we do in order to have more influence of how these people, get these positions.
I hate to be generic, but
let me know.
No, I think that needs
we
to
freeze?
Happen. What? Can you hear me?
Uh-oh. I'm over here babbling.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, can everybody hear me? Oh,
I can
God.
hear you. I don't know if anybody can hear me.
I'm waiting for the... Come on, computer. Well, just keep talking. I'll listen, because I can't hear anything right now.
You can't hear me at all? Okay. Well, goodness, I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to see if folks in the audience can hear. Yeah, okay, so Indigo says he can hear both of us.
Okay, so I can hear you.
They're saying they can hear both of us, but I can hear Art. Doesn't sound like he can hear me though. Which is strange. Yeah, it looks like Art is the only one that can't hear me. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. I guess I'm hosting until he come back in. Oh, what's up, Dr. Dunbar? What's going on? Yeah, I hate to be generic. It just sounds like I would say, we're a little oblivious as a country to who finances political figures, and I mean across the board, I think we're a little too giving on that. Um, hmm. Shonda, okay, yeah, but yeah, I'm not sure where else he might have wanted to go with that question as far as black candidates are concerned. I mean, it's the same. I mean, I don't really, I can't say I've heard a lot of people talking about, who Corey is funded by, who Kamala is funded by. I don't hear a lot of it. I think that might need to be part of a new aesthetic, especially amongst black men if black men are interested in going, into politics with this new kind of energy, this new thrust, that might need to be a part of how we function, to ask the question, how are people funded and what are their interests? How does that apply to us? We might need to do that a little more fervently. And I think a lot of that is a product of really just not being welcome politically. We're used for our votes, but more so, I would say we're probably used as show ponies, even as voters. Right? If a candidate can say they have, some black male votes, that's supposed to suggest something diverse about them. None of that really, works to our benefit. So I think we got to change the game. I think we got to change the narrative on how we participate, how we show up, and who we allow to use our image in relation to their platform. It's kind of like from my experience in the academy, I was asked at one point to develop a program for some of the incoming students. And before I even fully made a decision, I found my face on a brochure and a website. And I realized that the campus was using my image to present itself as diverse and interested in helping people and blah, blah, blah. It had nothing to do with what I actually did. It had nothing to do with whether or not they even funded me. They just used my image. And I think that's happening to us politically. But let me know if you guys can hear me. I can't tell if the thing is still going. You guys hear me at all? Okay. A little different. All right. Well, y'all can. All right. That's weird.
Okay, Doc, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. My computer, I don't know what's going on with that, but we'll make it work. I'm sorry about that, brother.
It's all good.
Yeah, I never thought that it'll do that, but yeah. But anyhow, yeah, I think yeah, that was the I don't know how you answered the question as far as because it cut me completely off. It took me off the planet. I'm like, wow.
It was weird because we could all hear you, so
because at first it had you borging, and then later on I couldn't even hear you at all, and I knew something was wrong when the I'm glad you got the spinning symbol, because it totally froze. And I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Okay.
But we'll keep it going. So I'm using my phone right now. That's why my acoustics are not as clear, probably.
You sound fine to me.
but anyhow, you guys out there, please hit that like button, share, and subscribe while I get the computer back on. But anyhow, I think that the next question would have been, I believe, that's not it.
Okay. Okay.
This is called readjusting. Everybody knows that as educators. Like, okay, if the electricity's off, we're just gonna light a candle and teach. we gonna make it work. You know.
That's right.
So, this is another one here, and I think I had to revamp that question here because it sounds kind of like cliche-ish in a bit.
Okay.
But it was basically how. Oh, it's working now. Great. Is basically how the Black political leader is packaged. You know, how he's being presented.
Mm-hmm.
You usually see him, you know.
Uh-oh. Disappeared. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Oh my God. Somebody must be listening. They're like, no. Anyhow, but usually the politician is usually he's packaged in a way to where he's damn. Remember when the Cosby Show came out,
mm-hmm.
and even though it was a very positive message, you know, people still had issues about it, saying that's not real. They're just making stuff up, and that kind of family don't exist, even though it did. But for some reason, certain people just didn't really get the message of the direction of where Cosby was going. Do you kind of find that with most of the time? Okay, like for example, the Black family on average is in disarray, is dysfunctional. You hear a lot of brothers talk about that in these spaces, about how, you know, it's just damn near impossible to have a full functionable family. Right? So I thought it worked. God. But now it's to the point to where, okay, these candidates are being presented in a way to where, okay, they're way up there as far as the family. You know, they got the son and daughter, everything, you know, they go to church, whatever it is. But the average person out here just don't have that kind of life. But at the same time, you're supposed to support them. Do you think that's by design as far as, because I think there's still a disconnect in a way, but even though there's a disconnect, even more on appearance, I think you're still being under pressure to support them.
What do you mean?
Like, is this something to where, because I don't have my question in front of me, but let me see. Does it seem like in a way to where they are trying to pit one side against the other as far as maybe class, blue collar versus white collar? Because, you know, for the most part, you know, a lot of your candidates seem to be presented as white collar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But for some reason, they want the blue collar guy to support them.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see a whole lot of blue collar candidates. You know, like I said, you know, people presuppose a college education, you know,
right,
or those who are going to be going into electoral politics. So I'm hearing some feedback. I don't know if it's, anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's always been kind of standard. And they still use it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just wondering, you know, like, for example, also, it's almost like how, I don't know how, you know, how I can package, well, not package, but how I can present it in a way to where, like, for example, when your singers come out, for the most part, they had to have like the lip gloss and the slick mustache. They have to have the baby hair, you know, sometimes fair complected to, like, you know, whatever it is. But then you have the other ones that's a little bit rough, hardcore, what have you. And it seems like, okay, based on how what the ladies like, you know, that's the guy that's gonna sell the most records. And it's almost in a way, and then then usually backstage, you know, these guys are going at each other because somebody likes one over the other, like maybe some jealousy or what have you, you know. And I don't know if that's a good analogy, but is it to the point to where, people are being pinned against each other in order to keep people at a certain level or keep some type of control?
I think that's a constant in politics and in most other areas. It's a control mechanism where, people are set against each other to kind of prevent us from actually identifying a shared opposition. So I think that's always been a constant, really, when it comes to this kind of issue. And I think it's also one of the dangers of something like the manosphere, because unlike other time periods in history, people can actually talk to one another in the manosphere across class, across geography, across occupation. The potential of a space like this where people are building their interests. Okay, I think they're saying they can hear the same thing I'm hearing.
Because I'm on my phone. I mean, I'm trying to hurry up. I'm trying to switch back, but the computer is not allowing my camera. So I had to keep turning it on and off for those, letting people know there's some little technical difficulties. But I'll go on mute because I think it was. But go ahead, continue.
Well, I just think that the danger of a space like this, where you have a grassroots group who are coming out of the internet, they're coming out of YouTube, they're coming out of a space where brothers can just talk. I don't care if you're a 17-year-old kid with a smartphone walking the streets of Harlem, or whether you are, whether you run a bank in Los Angeles and you participate in the manosphere. This space is somewhat of an equalizer in terms of everybody being able to engage each other. And for better or for worse, we're also a space that tends to have 8-hour platform discussions. Probably started by BGS, but it continues, and that's a culture that brothers have been developing in the manosphere. And what it does is it allows people to communicate across space and difference. Right, in ways that two people never would. I mean, the brothers that are on these platforms in these long discussions would probably never meet and sit down and have a real conversation in real life, but they're doing it online. So the potential of that going into politics is that you might be able to create a new aesthetic where you got people who are used to coming together across class, occupation, geography, so on and so forth, even political orientation. And actually building something despite those differences. Whereas in the past, we were separated. When we came into the political discussion separated, we hadn't had a whole lot of contact with people we didn't agree with prior to that. But we live in a whole different era, and technology has changed the game on that. So there's a potential that we could fall apart like any other thing, or there's a potential that we can use the fact that we're in dialogue across differences and building a platform nonetheless. That can be used to our benefit as well as our downfall. And it's just a question of what we decide to do with it. So that's the hope I have with what can be done in a space this unique.
Right. So oh God. So it's not gonna let me use my camera. I don't know what's going on, Doc. But please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. I'm relentless though. I gotta use my camera. We can't. We gotta
draw a picture of me. I was looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna force this computer to do what it's supposed to do. But in the meantime, please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. People, appreciate you guys coming through here. The next question that we're getting to is, I would say this. How does we'll go with both sides. So we're going to start with the Republicans for a minute. Based on our observation of how we see Republicans. I think because most brothers in this space are usually either leaning, I would say centered, but sometimes centered right or centered left.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what you have seen over the years, how do you think Republicans utilize their black male leadership? How do they utilize them on average?
Fundamentally, I don't know if it's much different than how Democrats do, but I will say Republicans might be a little more surprised that they're getting black male I don't know. I can't really say I followed it to any great extent, but at the end of the day, most black folk vote Democrat. Republicans know that. So when they do get black voters, I think they can tend to tout that in a manner that suggests that they are the better alternative. But again, I'm not saying that to suggest that Democrats have actually treated black male voters not only any better, but I don't think they've treated black male voters well at all. For the most part, I tend to find, the Democratic Party, pretty much ignores black men. I mean, there'll be a last minute push, to get the black male thought on a given election. It's usually a presidential election. It's usually last minute, and it's usually like a bullshit photo op where they sit us up in a photo in a barber shop or something, and it'll be a generic conversation. Oftentimes the brothers that they pick, to go in there don't really have a platform that they're familiar with. They just kind of come in and have a, kind of aimless conversation. And I think they do that on purpose to prevent from having to be accountable for black men's interests. Matter of fact, I think to some extent, many of these political parties don't believe black men have interests. And I think that's partly where we need to start. We need to develop what we believe our basic interests. And I think that's something we have to actually take the time to do. This is one of the reasons why on my channel I don't really do a lot of partisan politics stuff. I don't do a lot of religion, because I already know it doesn't take much to separate black men. If I double down on any candidate, Republican, Democrat, whatever, it's going to be a problem, and I'll lose, a significant portion of my audience behind one or the other. Doesn't matter what I go with. Same thing with religion. I double down on any one religious perspective, I lose X percentage of the audience. The point I'm making, the question I'm asking, is if we actually focus what we have in common,
Mm-hmm.
what can be produced out of that? Like when I see, and this is one of the things I've seen on my channel, and I've said this before, Christian, Muslim, Hebrew, Israelite, 5%er, what do you call it? Atheist, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. When I see these people, revolutionary, nationalist, when I start asking questions about the black male experience, like, have you had your kids taken from you?
Right.
Been brought into family court and been lied on by your ex-wife? You know what I mean? Have you been incarcerated or at least arrested behind something you didn't do? Or were you given more time than other groups who are arrested for the same crime? You know what I mean? When you start asking those kind of base level questions, you find that regardless of people's orientation, they have those things in common, especially in terms of black men. So if we have those things in common, can we share a space where we just focus on what we have in common?
Mm-hmm.
If we agree that we shouldn't have to spend more time in prison for committing the same crime that other groups, also commit. If we agree that you shouldn't have to lose, the entirety of your income behind a divorce.
Right.
If we agree on those base level things, if we agree that we should have 50-50 custody as a norm, as a default, and then you go into the weeds on who can be a parent, if we can agree that should be how it starts, if we can agree that there should probably be DNA testing as a standard.
Yes.
When we're talking about the delivery of a child and signing the birth certificate, if we as men and agree that these are certain things that we share in common, then to the extent that we can do that, can we operate as a group? We don't have to agree on everything else. I don't have to like who you want as president. You don't have to like my spiritual beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But do we agree on this question here about, child custody? Or things, and those are the kind of things I'm trying to take the basic common denominator of the black male experience and say, look, all of us agree with these basic things. Let's operate on that level, and share a political platform as it pertains to that. So that's kind of where I'm going with it.
Yeah, and that definitely is part of your black male agenda, political agenda. So.
Yeah. Can I share something very
Oh,
brief?
sure. Go right ahead.
Let me see here.
And while you guys out there waiting, appreciate I got 76 in the building. Please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Let me go ahead and move my screen out of here. Let me see if I can do this here. Okay, so I have no magic on this one here. All right, so we'll just keep it the way it was.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right. Well, basically, this is just this a little summary, and I'll put the well, I actually can't, but I'll send you if you can put the link I sent you in the
Yeah.
chat.
Can you let me see if I can open it again? Because when I was starting my computer, I have it right here. The 14 point.
Yeah, basically. And here's
Okay.
the thing. It's not that it's done. It's still open if people want to make suggestions. It is what I consider a living document. So it's an opportunity for us to add to and embellish on and develop. It doesn't have to stay static at all. And the reason I created it was for us to be able to have a static place we can go back to where our interests are lined out, itemized, clearly articulated, and we can keep referring back to it. And even if other groups of men can agree with a lot of what's on there, that's great. But the focus is unapologetically on Black men. And I do that so we can be very clear about what our interests are. And Black men wrote this. I didn't write it. I just created a place where I saved what they wrote. But the members of the ONYX Report that listen to the channel, those are the ones that put this list together. And from family court, to education, to affirmative action, to homelessness, to law enforcement, you name it, intimate partner violence, Black men wrote these issues out and said, these are the kinds of politics we want to see. So as I said, it remains open for people to add to, make suggestions for. But at the end of the day, I wanted a place that we could always go back to and say, this is our list. This is our barometer on whether or not a political figure deserves our vote. This is our measurement as to whether or not an elected official deserves our attention. How willing are you, and so when you have a political figure that says, hey, what do Black men want? Here's our list. Whether or not we support you depends on what you're willing to give. You got to give to get. You want these votes? This is what we want. And I don't think Black men have ever had a cogent list of requirements before. I think the Black community has at different points in time. I think Black women have definitely listed theirs out in various ways. I don't think Black men have. And I think it's time that Black men do.
Right.
And, and I'm not suggesting everybody has to like this list. If you got a better one, hey, suggest it. I'm just trying to help. But I think Black men need a starting point. And I'm just suggesting that this is the starting point.
And it's easy and accessible. All you have to do is let's see. I was able to put the link in the chat. Let me see.
Not able to.
I think I can do it. Let me see. Here we go. It works for me. All right. So hit all 3 channels. So, we need people that are here right now. Click on that link and take a look for yourself. Ponder over some things. Think about what you want to add to it. Because this is the Black man's time. I think, people starting to understand that, hey, these guys are, especially in the manosphere, they serious. They have needs. They have things that are pressing to them as well. Right.
I do think there's a portion of there's a significant portion of the manosphere that is maturing, in terms of focus, in terms of issues, in terms of the things we want to talk about. There's a crossroad you come to where it's like you can continue to deal with the same thing you've been dealing with for the last 5 years, or you can grow. And what exactly does growth look like? And I think, that's the question on the table. Where do we want to go with this? We know what we've been talking about for the last number of years. Do we want to continue, or do we want to take that into another space, into another set of issues? Do we want to, I think that's the question on the table.
Right. And let me throw in, because I think we've got a couple more questions, and then you have time to address anyone else's questions that may be in the chat or what have you.
Sure.
Okay, so let me. Hey, this is better. Okay, I thought I would. Yeah, I didn't know this one. This came out better. Okay. Anyhow, I'm still new to this thing as far as the more serious stuff here. Um, Now this one is kind of. It's probably. I mean, it's pretty big. It says black male political leaders are out. Out there. There's some that are fighting social justice. Most likely on the left. And then you got some that are maintaining the white supremacist status quo, on the right. I mean, not gonna name names, but everybody know who they are. How often we see the political machine selected black male leadership face conflict with black misandry from feminists? Have they, how have you ever seen any kind of black male political figure, especially in a high position that beside, only one I can think of is when that lady put her finger in Obama's face. But I mean, have you seen any of those kind of people?
Have I seen them?
Have you seen them face some kind of misandry? I'm talking about the black men misandry while they're in office, especially the ones that's been selected by the machine, quote unquote, political machine.
I think there have been some minor issues. I think it tends to be downplayed, and you're lucky if you even hear about it in the news. But I think part of the reason for that is, because many of these candidates know that they pretty much answer to their primary voting contingency, which tend to be black women. I think the animosity toward black men is not quite as brazen as the average brother may deal with, because you're dealing with a political figure that represents your interests. Now, here's the question, though. As more black women move into electoral politics, the question as far as misandry or institutionalized misandry might be, will black women continue to see black men as a necessity in politics if they successfully feel that they've been able to replace them, right? And that's kind of one of the things that I consider. So black men, I think, in politics don't get the full brunt of misandry because they're useful, they're needed to accomplish a certain end. But the more they're replaced, I think that may change, and they will be replaced as long as black men don't make their presence felt. And I think black men in many ways have been kind of downplayed, and I think their interest in politics has also been kind of downplayed from childhood onward. We're not really taught as children that politics have much to do with black men, in the sense that it actually can change our situation. We're kind of taught that we just need to vote for who we're told to vote for in a certain kind of way, and we kind of have many of us have an apolitical kind of idea about politics, but that's because we've never really seen it operate in our interest. But when you're dealing with a group like black women who have been courted, they've been courted by the political machine, especially on the left.
Oh, yes.
They're seeing a return. I mean, when you've been able to get a grant and set up a nonprofit and get a couple $100,000 or a few $100,000, that changes your attitude about politics, because you're literally able to touch the resources. You're able to see that this is real. You know what I mean? When as a black male, if all of this is just abstract for you, it doesn't have a real address, you tend to be somewhat, disenchanted, apolitical, because it's not real for you. You've not been welcomed in any significant way. They're not going out of their way to target black men,
right?
And not in any way that yields, any kind of possibility. So I think that's by design. I think getting black men to take their political potential seriously has to be tied into whether or not this can be profitable, and not just monetarily, but profitable in terms of being able to get resources to work in your favor, to create policy and get it passed that works in your favor. It's not going to be real to us until we start to see that. And that's the uphill battle we got to fight. So as far as the misandry is concerned, I think personally it will grow the more we see, or I said, the fewer black men we see going into electoral politics, the more black women we see going into it. I think that's one of the things that kind of happens. And I've seen black women welcomed in these spaces differently than black men. Again, going back to the academy, many of the brothers I know that teach, they go home. They may sit on, help a committee here or there. Black women, have a whole different relationship to the institution. They get grants, they get out of having to teach. They're over different committees, they're traveling. They're welcome in a different way. And then they turn and look at you and say, well, you could do the same thing. And they don't really understand we're not welcome in that way. I used to conduct these experiments on a lower level. I was dating a lady who was also a professor at the same institution. And, for her, dipping into all of these different opportunities was just a default. For me, she didn't understand why I didn't seem to be very excited about all these new possibilities. And when I would, at her suggestion, when I would apply for these different things, she didn't understand why I would get turned down and she wouldn't. Right. My CV looked far better than hers. She didn't understand when, certain offices would welcome her and they wouldn't even return my emails. She wouldn't understand those kind of nuanced things. And I would let her sit in on phone calls with administrators that she just adored that would talk to me like I stole something from them. Right. Understand. And so, so when you try to explain institutional anti-black misandry, to them, it's a concept. It's not really real. And a lot of feminists will tell you, that shit isn't real. Sexism is real. Misogyny is real. Misandry is just some shit y'all made up. They'll say that.
Right. Right.
But when you actually point out examples of misandry, they'll tell you, well, I don't know how to explain it, but they won't allow you the reality of what that means day to day. So what I'm saying is that black women have been kind of courted by institutions in a way that black men haven't. They've been made to feel, welcome. They've been made to feel that their voices can be heard. Black men have not. And that's one of the differences in our experiences. Black men have not. I mean, even going through, look, I'll give you a basic level example. My sister and I went to the same high school. Now, she's 3 years younger than me. We both are professors right now. But at that time, I graduated from high school. I applied to several different colleges. I went to Cal State Dominguez. I didn't get much guidance from my campus, from my high school. The high school advisor, college advisor, academic advisor, the only thing he told me is he said community college is the same thing as Harvard.
Oh, wow.
If you go to De Anza Community College, it's exactly the same as going to Harvard.
That's sad.
Scores of black and brown folk straight to community college and didn't do much as far as college for black folk, right? Not at all. My teachers treated me like I would steal something from them because I was 6 foot whatever, and so they wouldn't even have meetings with me in the classroom alone. Right now, my younger sister, on the other hand, she had teachers helping her. She had teachers that bought her computers. She had teachers that had contacts at UC Berkeley and were helping her apply. They were giving her advice on how she could get credit in community college while still in high school to graduate early. These folks wouldn't talk to me about homework assignments, let alone go beyond that. So, she and I are both professors, but our road to getting here was radically different. And in many of the imaginations of the people I worked with, professors, administrators at the various campuses I went to, I was an anomaly. They didn't, I put it to you this way, I wasn't supposed to be there.
Right. That's most of our story.
Yeah. If you're a successful black male in a given area, much of the time, the way you're treated by others is you're not even supposed to be here. You know what I mean? But they have a way of interpreting black female presence. Black male presence, they either deal with hostility or just this kind of cognitive dissonance about why you're even there. You don't really belong. And so that said, that tends to be our relationship with institutions. We don't come into this with a sense of belonging. We don't come into this with a sense that we belong there. And that goes on I mean, even to the guys coming into college now.
Right.
70% of black males who go to college nationally drop out their first year.
Yeah.
We don't have a sense of belonging. We don't feel like we're supposed to be there. We haven't been talked to in our entire lives by family and by school administrations telling us that college for you is going to be as natural as going from 10th to 11th grade. That's not how we're talked to.
Yeah. And it trickled down to the males, the young males, to where they're beating the same drum.
Exactly. They check out. And even for the percentage that go to college, like I said, they don't stay. They don't have a sense of belonging. And so a lot of the time, black women don't understand that difference between us. They look at it like, well, if we did it, you should be doing it because we're all black.
Right.
It's based on this, what I call, this flat blackness idea that black folk live the same reality because we're all black. But in terms of gender, when you look at the statistics around so many different areas, black men are doing so much worse than black women. And much of the time that gets ignored unless it's politically, beneficial for black women to acknowledge our blackness. So in other words, if they want to have a conversation about high rates of incarceration for black folk in order to get new policy passed that black women are pushing, they'll use black male incarceration rates. But if you really want to have a conversation about black men's needs around incarceration, then the conversation changes. So in other words, dealing with flat blackness means that our numbers are useful when they're useful. And when they don't benefit black women, we don't have a conversation about what black men experience. It's just not really part of the discussion. When you try to explain that we actually live different lives, many black women will ignore you. I've noticed this changes though when they have sons. When black women have sons, the conversation changes, and that usually takes a little bit of time when their sons reach a certain age, most particularly getting past fourth grade. When those sons start to experience black male life, the calls I get from women, the emails I get from women are, what the hell is going on? At first, it kind of centers around he's doing something wrong.
Right.
And then when they get past he's doing something wrong and realize it has nothing to do with anything he's doing, then there's this realization that black males are often treated differently. And you're talking about women in their late 30s and 40s who are coming to this conclusion for the first time, that the brothers, the fathers, the uncles, the sons, the grandsons are living a different reality. They're coming into this realization as grown-ass women. And it's forcing them to look at the men in their lives for the first time and say, wow, I never noticed this. And I can't tell you how many women I get that send me those kind of messages. But they're often still not able to let go of that feminist orientation, that feminist training that suggests that men just need to work harder.
Right.
So they still kind of revert back to that from time to time. But we're primarily raised with this sense that there's no difference between us, and men are just dropping the ball because they're not working hard enough.
Yeah, because he loses cuteness. He's not cute anymore.
Yeah, not cute anymore. But they often overlook that we black men have worked themselves into their graves for generations.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's one of the trials that black men face. Even if you are one of the few black men that get your doctorate or get, whatever it is you're supposed to get, the highest level of achievement in a given field, even when you get it, you have people that don't know how to process your presence. And
right.
That includes black women.
Man, yeah, definitely want to probably get to that part, because I really want to definitely focus on that part on our next project, because I think that's the thing that we're overlooking. Like Clash of the Titans, when they were trying to figure out how to take out the Kraken, and they were like, those witches said, it had to be Titan against Titan, so they had to get Medusa to take out the Kraken. And I consider the Kraken, the feminist machine. And we're thinking that we can just yell and scream at them and they change, but I think you have to arm yourself with tools to counteract some of their expertise, because they feel like they have the upper hand and they're comfortable with it. And also, it kind of remind me also that you know how it is when you're in like a majority, we just say a majority white space or area, and you're used to being the only black person there. So instead of just welcome, it's like, oh, another brother, another sister. It's just more like, hey, what are you doing here? This is
Mm.
my space.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the way they've been rolling for years, man. I mean,
Mm.
as you know.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, definitely. Competition for resources, attention, the opportunity to advance. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, again, with the 70s idea of blackness, we would have seen that as an opportunity to work together. I think it's at a different point now, however, where the competition is even between black men and women, you know.
Hmm. Now, this other question here, and again, you guys out there, please hit that like button, share, subscribe. At least give me 100 likes so that the playback would be nice and strong in the algorithms. Um, Now, this one here, I'm looking at. Okay, well, the majority of the black male political leaders are in position to stay in there. They usually put in their position to stay in their place, quote unquote, when it comes to speaking their mind or addressing issues essentially for black people. Um, but does it appear that whether it's the left or the right, does it appear that they have a problem with strong black masculinity?
Oh, there's no question. You already know. Yeah.
I had to put my hand in the cage and snatch it out.
Oh man, there's so many spaces that are fearful of unapologetically masculine black men. It's palpable. I mean, I don't care if
Mhm,
you're talking about the corporate environment, the educational environment, or even the family, the black family.
mhm.
There's a staunch fear of unapologetic black masculinity. There's no question to me about that, and I think that's one of the reasons we've seen such a split in terms of the rise of single parenthood in the black community. I think the opportunities given to women to be single mothers, really what that tended to be was an opportunity for women to use resources and institutions to establish and maintain a position of control of the family. This is what the family court issue is all about for many black men. Black women
Mhm.
have been given resources in terms of policy, in terms of judgments levied by the family court that put them in a position of authority and don't allow for black men to lead. I think many women turn to that to avoid being in a position or in a family setting where black men lead. And I think part of that has been this kind of maligning and stereotyping of black men as monsters and oppressors, right? And that's why you had this push from the 1980s onward to attack all things considered black and patriarchal.
Mhm.
But I think you still have the same kind of things in different spaces, whether you're talking about law enforcement, the corporate world, education. The fear of black men is very much tied to this onslaught and war with black masculinity that we've seen really for centuries. But I think it's just reached a more refined level where it can be done with violence, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
But when you listen to police officers, for example, that have attacked, abused and killed black men, listen to the language that they use. Most of the time, they talk about being afraid of what he might do, and this can even
Yeah.
be 12-year-old, kids, and they use that same language. So there's an incredible amount of fear around unapologetic black masculinity that has been present my entire lives, and most of us understand that. Tends to be, especially if you're talking about corporate or something like that. The more accomplished the black male you're talking to, the
Mhm.
more he can tell you about being able to code switch.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you're a teacher, you understand this.
Right. Right.
You can't reach that position without understanding how to code switch. I mean, even down to elementary school, the black males that got sent to special ed were often the ones that didn't code switch in the same kind of way. If white women teachers were afraid of you, guess where you ended up?
Special ed.
But if you could make women in particular in the classroom feel safe, if you could make white folk feel safe, if you knew how to switch
You're a
and
TA.
communicate like they do, you were considered safe. All of that is really, really navigating people's fear of black men. That's
So that
really
kind
all
of,
that comes down to.
and that kind of goes into what you did a live, well, I don't know, or a upload. I forgot which one it was, but you mentioned when your lady came by to do some service at your home, and you remember that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think I played that because I'm like, wait a minute, because I think even if we do have the strong masculine tendencies or what have you, we still have to dummy it down or tone it down to make people feel safe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And she had one of those jobs. I think it was. I think she was trying to sell me some blinds. I think that's what it was. But she had one of those jobs where you go to people's houses that you don't know and you try to sell them.
Hmm.
And so I already understand what she has to be concerned about. I get it. I'm not suggesting she shouldn't be concerned. I get it. But what a lot of those women, who talk about that don't realize is that as a black male, her assumptions about me and my motivations can land me in prison behind that. Look, there have been black men who've been sent to prison for decades because a woman dreamed, and I bullshit you not, look it up.
Hmm.
A woman dreamed that he did something to her. See, we talk about how much the culture has changed since the rise of Me Too. But all Me Too did was it just showed other groups of men the way black men have always lived. Your freedom and well-being was often in the hands of a woman, most particularly a white woman. And what she said determined your quality of life. If she said you did something, you did something. Even if it was looking at her. I mean, there was a point in time in the South, for example, you couldn't look white folk in the eye, especially white women.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Especially white women. So women, and most particularly white women, have had a power in society in terms of how they can affect black male life that we don't talk about. And so again, Me Too just gave other groups of men a taste of what that is, where she can say something. She could say something from 40 years ago happened. I mean, we just saw this happen with what's the brother who's the boxer who fought Muhammad Ali?
George Foreman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He gets accused of something that happened decades ago, and he has to take it seriously. And the accuser doesn't even have to be named publicly, even when we find that they lied. I mean, this just happened with Chris Brown. We saw this happen with Snoop Dogg. We saw this happen. There's a number of these black male celebrities who are dealing with these situations where random women can say anything, and they don't even have to worry about their reputation, because even if they're found out to be lying, nobody knows their names. But but you got to deal with it. But that's been black male life for centuries. Her word could often determine life or death for you.
Yeah. That's what's weird, because that goes all into the 9 areas of activity, and I don't know why people are acting cavalier about it. Like, oh, whatever, just there's sometimes they just try to say brush it off or look the other way or whatever, and I'm like, dude, this is your life.
Yeah.
Why be silent about it or even dismissive?
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
Oh.
Not to say I have to look at those guys sideways when they say that, or come in these spaces and say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, why come here? I mean, I get it. You got a Becky and all that, or Ling Ling or whatever, but what about your life? That should have nothing to do with who you like. What about the brothers, black people, black men? Why is that not a concern?
It's difficult. And when you get to the 60s and the 70s and onward, and you see black women using law enforcement against black men.
Yes.
Now what? Because that was always the purview of white women, right?
Right.
Okay. Now I'm not talking about someone who is actually abusing or sexually assaulting, someone, a black woman. If the police are called, that needs to happen.
Right.
I'm talking about the abuse and the misuse of law enforcement as a mechanism for controlling black men.
Like a parent.
Well, yeah, it could be a parent, but I told this story. This happened about a year and a half ago. I had a former student of mine call me, and he said, Doc, he called me about 10 o'clock at night out of the blue. And I hadn't spoken to him in years. He said, Doc, I've been listening to your radio show, and I've disagreed with you for years. I think you're way too hard on women. I just haven't seen your point. But he said, but I called you to say you were right. And I said, well, what happened? What are you talking about? He said, well, he said, me and my boy, we did prison time and we built businesses and we're 6-figure earners now. He said, my friend just got married to a young woman a couple months ago. She called the police tonight and had him put back in jail. So we've been out for over a decade.
Wow.
He had him put back in jail. I said, well, why? He said, because he came home late and she decided that he was cheating. So she called the police and told them that he beat her.
Wow.
And he's back in jail. So you're talking about a 6-figure earning brother that built himself and his business up after 10 years, after being out of prison for 10 years. And then, now he's back in jail because she felt a way about him coming home late. That had nothing to do with protecting her safety. That had nothing to do with, punishing him for something he did that was justifiable. That had everything to do with the fact that she had a power that she knew she could use.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just ask you: if you decide that you really want to get some woman locked up, if you call the police and said, she violated me, what are the chances they're going to go over and lock her up right then and there that night?
They hang up in my face.
Exactly. It's a power that women understand that they have. And in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, we started to see that power applied to Black women, and we started to see Black women use it. And because that was so reminiscent of our experience with white women, you really got this point where many Black men, again, having a kind of more subtle Black masculinist turn, we're starting to realize that you're not even safe in your own community from this. Now what?
Yeah.
Where do you go with it?
Yeah, that's what I think this is the time. Matter of fact, this is probably the most crucial time to at least arm yourself with, I guess, knowledge, the law, the Black manosphere, or just people with common interests to try to protect yourself, your sons, nephews, even your brothers, because this stuff here is just not going to go away just because you're not paying attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we got one last question, but before, let me go ahead and give some acknowledgments here. Let's see. We got the great artisan MC known as the Art Beats. Thank you for the Cash App. Let's see. My Rick James is he's a little slow, but he's gonna come about. And shout out to let's see, we have another one here. And please hit that like button, share, subscribe while we getting our stuff together. A shout out to Aquatechy for the Cash App. Appreciate you, fam. And shout out to, let's see here. Gosh. Oh, here we go. Shout out to Tutoriv for the Cash App. And shout out to Ibmore, the Internal. Appreciate you, fam. So I'm going to hook everybody up with this one little sentiment. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah! All right. So we had to put them all in one. All right. So we got this last question here. And it's pretty a simple one. I think you probably laugh at it. But do we have a chance to select our own leader as Black men?
Man. The thing is, I am optimistic that we can, if we decide to. Because again, this is not, how do I put it? I don't think this space that we've created is supposed to exist as far as most people are concerned. I think a lot of people are shocked that it does exist, and they're waiting for it to be pulled apart. Now, as it stands, if YouTube decided to get rid of everybody's channel overnight, where would the manosphere be? I think that's a concern. I think we do have to have that conversation. But to the extent that we have it, I think it can be used in a way that people don't expect. And this is something BGS hit me to when Kevin died. What was the award ceremony where they honored him and acknowledged him? forget which one. I don't keep up with the award ceremonies. It was
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was.
The Manosphere of the Year or something.
No. It was on television. It was like I can't remember if it was the BET something. It was I can't remember what it was.
Really? I didn't know
One of
that.
the brothers in the chat may remember. We saw him on an episode of Atlanta, and then there was this award ceremony where he was acknowledged, and it was like, yeah, Fame Man and Jay Moore saying BET. They acknowledged him. And he wasn't sponsored and created by corporate entities or corporate media. He came out of the space that we're in. And I think the danger of that is it really let us know that there is a point where corporate media will bend to the will of the people if you create enough reason to do so.
Right.
But there is potential for that. We just have to decide that that's what we want. And I think it's slow coming in some respects because, we've not really experienced that much. But at the end of the day, there's an opportunity here for Black men to really change their position based on how willing they're going to be to do it. And that's the question. How willing are we to want to change our position? How willing are we to envision another role we can play in society, in households, so on and so forth? Like, even if you look at this whole Passport Brothers movement, that has an impact on the Black family. That is a statement to Black women. And there are plenty of Black women that don't want to hear it, but there are plenty of Black women that are listening and saying,
right.
Right. We do have to start taking this seriously. If you're willing to make that statement to Black women, can you be willing to make that statement to the United States government?
Oh, wow. That's profound. And do you have any time to address any of the questions in the chat if anybody have any?
Yeah, sure.
Because we're at the 2 hour mark, almost at the 2 hour mark. So if anybody have any questions, let me pop this here. And people that are coming up, please, no long soliloquies and, I believe the children are our future and all this stuff. Just ask the brother a question based on some of the stuff that you heard so he can give and shout out to Indigo Flow for the super chat.
Yeah, I'm Rick James.
Yeah, so we give people a little bit of time if they want to come up and ask questions.
Indigo was blowing up the chat a little minute ago.
Yeah, because go ahead.
No, I just said what's up to him. Indigo was blowing it up, So.
Oh yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's hard for me to read, interview, and draw. I wish I had like a secretary or something to knock that out, like nephew Tommy or something. But
Bo is saying something that I think is interesting. It says when Kevin died, a sister FB messaged and said Kevin gave me insight into what Black men were thinking. She said it was the first time she had heard that. That's the thing. We never had a platform, maybe, outside of hip hop and maybe comedy. We had to filter Black men's experiences through a variety of individual artists and comedians. But we didn't really have a wide platform. So for the last 40, 50 years, Black women have been deciding on who we are and what we do and why we do it without much feedback from men. And the reality is the manosphere, or Kevin as an individual, was often the first time many of these women actually heard Black men respond to decades of accusations about who we are and what we do and why we do it.
Right.
And hit with that logic, it was like, well, we never thought Black men actually had a point to make before listening to it via somebody like Kevin or, a number of other brothers doing this work. They haven't heard it. Even if it's offensive to their sensibilities. And, you're not going to have decades of Black men without a platform being told they ain't shit. You're not going to have that response without there being some fire to it. But the point is, there is a logic there. There is an experience Black men have that hasn't been heard until very recently.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I mean, you got brothers who've been married for 20, 30 years who are coming into the manosphere saying, yeah, I do feel that way. I just never knew how to say it.
Right. Right.
I thought I had to accept this. I thought I had to stay in an unhappy, sexless marriage just because I was told this is what a good man did. I didn't know there was a vocabulary to explain why I'm feeling like this and whether or not I should take it. I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think going back, I think probably the most profound I got out of this interview was how our politicians, our black male politicians, are selected. It's almost pretty much similar, almost parallel to how the black church choose their pastor or their deacons, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge, And it goes, it's almost like the chicken or the egg. Did the black church learn this from their slave masters, or or did they just come up with this system on their own? As far as the slave master, or actually no, not slave master, but the powers that be observed how the black church, did their selection, and they just went on and did this in politics. It's that's profound, Doc. But we have Dead Set in the building. Dr. Dead Set.
Oh, no.
Would you like what kind of question do you have for Dr. T. Hasan Johnson?
My question is more about the actions that can be taken now. Because when you were talking about some of the more judicial issues that we're facing, I think I put it in the comment, is that a lot of those are due process issues that we can take care of immediately. Because one of the issues that I'm facing in my own case is the fact that, like, as you know, the cornerstone of our law system is the right to face your accuser. And when you were describing this woman saying this woman making accusations, and then we never get to face her. I mean, the legality of that, that lies at the very core of the Constitution in all 50 states, plus the U.S. Constitution. So, and I know you're not a lawyer,
right?
But this problem is widespread because not only are we facing, like, in my case, my ex was using some protection plan that I didn't even sign. I was like, well, what is this? This protection plan came from one of the agencies, which is under the executive. Due process can only come through the judiciary. So they already violated separation of powers. So what I'm asking for is, gosh, I don't even know how to phrase the question.
Yeah.
Testify.
I hear you.
The question is
real quick.
Something
That's part of the problem, though, because you're right. Most of us don't know how to phrase the question. But go ahead.
Yes. So the question is, I guess it's an education question, because one of the biggest problems is that when I talk to, like, my cousins about these issues, they didn't even know the basics of how the court systems work or what they're supposed to argue. And then they can't even afford a lawyer. So they just walk in there with no weapons in their hands.
Yeah. But she walks in the court with a different attitude, because not only does she understand she's more likely to win if it's a family court matter, she also understands she can get you to pay her court fees.
Yep.
So there's a different sensibility, even if you know you can't afford a lawyer, but you also know you're more than likely going to be able to get him to pay for it. You know what I'm saying? It's a different, whenever I hear brothers going to court, we got a different mentality. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to cover this shit. I don't want to do it. Maybe I can agree with whatever she's putting on the table before we have to go, because I can't afford it. You know what I mean? It's a different sensibility. We're not welcome in that space. She understands that she is. But
it's the equivalent of a payout, basically. Pay me so you can go away.
Yeah. But I think I had a brother on my show I think this might have been 2 years ago at this point, a brother named Carnell Smith. And he does a lot of work on his experience with family court, his experience with custody. Actually, more than anything, his work is on false paternity. That was it. His work was on false paternity. And in that interview on my show, he actually spent a crazy amount of money, actually to the point where his case got taken to the Supreme Court, if I remember correctly. And he actually changed policy in his state, which I want to say was Georgia, but don't quote me on that. You can actually watch the show. But the reason I bring that up is he created a precedent so that when other Black men had to deal with this false paternity issue, you could actually go and use his case to back a position. There's more of that that's needed for Black men.
Oh, yeah, stare decisis. That's a big weapon.
Yeah. We need to be able to ask the questions legally, the legal questions that you're asking, and use what's already on the books to our benefit. But we also need to have precedent. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so any of you in the chat that are in law can speak to this better than I can. But we need to be in a position to provide that as a rationale for the everyday cat who's in that situation to be able to use to his benefit. But we have to decide that we're going to use our space to do that. And that, to me, kind of starts first. Are we going to do this? Are we going to, because we're already sharing our experiences in a way I've never seen before. I mean, this was something I used to see confined to literally the barbershop in the 1980s. You may have, anywhere from 5 to 15 men in one room sharing stories. Now we have millions. I mean, we got brothers listening in from South Africa, from London, you know what I mean, from Australia, all over the U.S., and these brothers are actually sharing their experiences. So it's a question of, okay, we're doing this. Are we going to use it? Are we going to share, tactics? I mean, if you made it out of court and you got the judgment on your side, are you going to share how you did it? Is there a precedent that another brother can use in court? Are you going to share the policies or the particular laws that you were able to use? I mean, we gotta really decide if we're going to mobilize behind the space we have.
Right.
What I understand about you, Dead Set, is you did some shit that was fairly unheard of.
I'm telling you.
Fairly unheard of.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So are we gonna say, we're gonna listen to this story?
Yeah, once it's wrapped up, which won't be until February of next year, then like I said, I've got a lot of support cases because I did do my homework.
Right.
And if they follow the laws, she's going to end up in jail. That's how bad it is.
Well, now I'm going to put this in your court for a second. Is there going to be a book that we can read?
I've already started archiving, put it that way.
There we go.
I haven't. The thing, what I don't like about some of the stories that the brothers are telling, well, not even the brothers, just men in general are telling online, especially when dealing with child support, because there are laws. I mean, there are 5 states that have already ruled, Supreme Courts that's ruled child support unconstitutional. And a lot of brothers don't know about this. Georgia was one of them.
I've never heard that.
Yes, Michigan was another one. So, and I've never understood how child support could even work, much less be enforced.
Right.
But white men have been taking these cases to Supreme Court for the last, 40 years? And they had finally started getting some traction. Like in New Jersey, there's this Latino brother who got his license back because they ruled, the state Supreme Court ruled that it violated separation of powers. I mean, these are the types of stories that we generally don't hear on this side, because a lot of brothers aren't going over to their spaces and just shadow listening like they do us all of the time, which is what I started doing. But that leads me to another question. And this happens to deal with our sense of belonging, because in my opinion, I've always thought that my own sense of belonging began with my existence here in the United States. And I generally use the 4th of July as an example. I don't celebrate it because I know that holiday was not about me. And so one of the things, like when I would travel, like let's say I lived in England for a time and I went to Japan. And one of the most fascinating things, Rotterdam, I really got the sense. One of the most fascinating things about travel is when I look at what these people built for themselves.
Okay.
You can see their story written in their buildings. It's in their literature. It's everywhere. These people built this for themselves. And it was the first time that I left the country that I realized that that didn't exist for me here in the United States. The United States was not built for me. It was not built for Black people with stepchildren here.
Right.
So my question is, does that sense of non-belonging in the courtrooms, in the education system, begin much earlier?
Earlier in what sense?
Earlier in our lives, like once a boy begins to understand that.
Well, I would argue that there are instances that I understood and started to grasp that I didn't belong in my own family.
Oh.
You grow up in we're talking about a gynocracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you are a Black male in a gynocracy and you start to see the way women even talk about men, and you're a young boy, you don't have a language for it at 5, at 7, at 9, but you start to see. I remember, like, it's kind of like the first time a group of women excitedly watched The Color Purple in my family, and I was witness to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The high-fiving, the anger, the rage directed at men, and I'm sitting there as a little boy going, I don't have a language for this shit. I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel that I belonged, in that respect. So if you already kind of have questions about belonging, even in your own family, what happens by the time you go to kindergarten and you have a white woman teacher that treats you like an other?
Mm-hmm.
That's K through 12, right? And then you start to feel it outside of that in other institutions. You get to a point where belonging becomes the norm of your existence, or not belonging. Not belonging becomes your norm. And so what you just said about Germany hit me, and that's one of the things about travel that really hits you. You go to a place where the history is written in the very walls, the architecture, the design, and the people are a part of that. They see reflections of themselves in the very physical building of the society around them. And you don't even feel welcome in your own damn family. And if not the family you grew up in, you don't, or I should say, in addition to, you also don't even feel welcome in the family you formed. You met a woman, you had kids, you don't feel welcome there, especially by the time she's taking you to court.
Yeah, tell me about
How welcome do you feel? So then, so for me, just real quick, I'll just say this. The manosphere offers a lot of potential in a lot of different ways. I'm not saying it's there. I'm saying it can be. Because if you have this collective of men that really never felt at home anywhere, what happens when the only place I can feel at home is in the understanding that Dead Set gets what I'm talking about and can tell me stories that are similar to mine, and I've never met this brother before. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. My only sense of home is in how much you and I can identify the experiences of feeling homeless. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm just saying that's where my head is.
Mm-hmm. And gentlemen, have you heard? I mean, did anybody? How can I say this? We have a person in the back named Jay Moore. Is he legit?
Never heard of him.
I've never heard of him. Maybe somebody in chat has heard of him.
I know Jay Moore, the comedian, but I don't think this is the same guy.
Yeah, I don't think that's him.
Okay.
I would be shocked if he was him.
Oh, so he waved. Okay. So, all right. You're legit. Okay. You can put your camera off.
Hello, gentlemen.
All right. But, so we're going to get to AB Media. AB Media, you have a question for Dr. T. Hasan Johnson.
Yes, how's it going, Dr. T?
What's going on, man?
Yeah, how can we spread the knowledge of this word called misandry? Well, what can we do to continue to spread the word about misandry and really make it a thing? Although to be fair, the MCU is kind of helping us a little bit, but go ahead.
I was going to say, first thing we got to do is support that brother AB Media's channel. That's one of the first ways.
Right. He started putting this link in the chat. So I'm like, okay, all right.
But shout out to Dead Set. I didn't know he was going to get off right then, but appreciate you coming up.
That's a busy man. Dead Set be on. He's here.
No, but I mean, that's one of the things, Dr. Curry is writing about it. I'm writing about it. You know, we just got to. I think the part of it is we have to really, begin to explain how it affects, how we live, and how it affects where we are, and what barriers we may have even had to face. Most of the time we don't understand that because we've not seen people talk about it in a way that made sense to what we live. Misandry is a word that most people don't know what it means. Or
does it exist?
Or that it exists. Yeah, I'll hold classes and I'll ask people, how many of you, by show of hands, know what misogyny is? Very rarely does someone not raise their hand.
Right.
And when I say, well, does anybody know what misandry is? It's the exact opposite. Matter of fact, and every time I've done it, I don't think I've ever had someone raise their hand and know what misandry was. Right.
I'll be perfectly honest with you, sir. I did not know what that term meant until you explained it.
Yeah. But it makes no, and when you start to talk about how it affects us, it makes sense very quickly, if you have experiences that resonate. But for other groups that don't fall under that umbrella of what misandry is, they just look at you like you just made some shit up. So I was talking to Dr. Ronald Neal at one point. We were talking about misandry, and we started talking about the very specific hatred of not just black men, but heterosexual black men, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the fear of heterosexual black men, and he was talking about heterophobia. And I remember talking about this on Facebook, and of course I had the feminists that came in and said, this is some bullshit. Y'all just made this up. Ain't nobody afraid of heterosexual men, black men or whatever. I said, have you ever heard of lynching? And there was absolute silence. Because the majority of lynchings, as far as black men were concerned, took place at the accusation of, a sexual threat against white women. Well, who exactly were you targeting with this sexual threat of white women? You were targeting heterosexual black men. But when these brothers were being lynched, that was an example of a very particular type of misandry that was targeted at heterosexual black men. It's not to say that these concepts can't be understood. They just have to be explained in a way that black men can actually resonate with. It's like, well, wait a minute. I understand that. I understand every time I walk into an elevator and women clutch their purse, particularly white women. I understand.
Clutch their purse, look at you funny.
Yeah. And had you ever had that experience going into a job interview?
Yeah.
You haven't even interviewed yet, but you already know that this woman is clutching her purse looking at you. Those kind of subtle things.
Chicks looking at you like, why are you looking like that? I don't want you. I'm like, I'm not even trying to look at you like that.
See what I mean? Right?
I was actually in the store one day in the black neighborhood, and I'm waiting for this lady to get done doing whatever she's doing so I can go look in that section. And all of a sudden I hear from my cow's mouth, "You ain't my daddy."
Oh wow.
I was like, really? Yeah. I'm like, I'm not even trying to go there. I'm trying to shop and go home. I'm not trying to flirt with anybody. I don't go in the store. I'm sorry, I don't go in the store to flirt.
Right.
I'm trying to take care of business so I can get home.
Right. Right. I remember Valdez telling stories about walking into stores, maybe to return something he had purchased or whatever, and he'd be in a line. And the sister at the front of the line would be helping people and smiling. And then when he'd get to the front of the line,
get the frown face.
You know what I mean?
What you want?
What you want?
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I can hear it on the phone if I call in. I'm like, oh, shit. Here we
go. I'm sure you've heard this. Now, sir. That's when you know that's when you know the hood stuff's about to happen.
You got to put that. Oh, go ahead. No,
I'm gonna tell you. This is how you know it's real bad. When you can hear it. You know how you call in you call an 800 number and you're waiting for an operator to pick up, and you can tell it's a sister, and you reach the point where you actually hang up and get back in the queue. Not because she individually did anything, but you've had it happen enough to where you're like, I don't even want to bring my case to something. Yeah. That's when it's been bad. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying that's when you know it's bad. When it's happened enough for brothers to say, I don't even want to be in the situation. That is an example of misandry. in terms of your treatment. You're being treated a certain way just for being a black male. And when you try to say that these things happen, everybody looks like you crazy except other black men. Now, other black men ain't exactly going to be screaming down with a megaphone that it happens, but you know that look when another brother looks at you and says, "Yeah, I've been there, bro. I've been there, player."
I've told this story on your channel. I've had a chick sexually grope me, and when I went to my family about it, I got accused of sleeping with a prostitute.
Wow.
Well, don't get your passport then, brother. No, I'm joking. Go ahead. But we got Jay Moore in the building. So you had a question, sir?
Yeah, I'm about to drop down.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
All right.
Doing good. Wait, first, Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, thank you for existing, because you honestly, like, the son husband thing. I was always, like, since a child, since I was like basically had consciousness, I always felt this pressure on me or something, like I'm been like I don't know. It just the way because I've basically been a son husband my entire life, and that was like you basically gave me you gave me the words for it, and I was like, yo, thank God, because this is what's going on. I'm like, I've been feeling like exactly like a husband all my goddamn life, and the way I talk, and even when I was like a kid, I remember it was just like I used to play around with like kids that are younger than me, and then like the adults, even my own mom was like asking me like, why would you play with little kids that are younger than you? I was like, I just wanted like to keep some semblance of my childhood. Right. And I didn't understand how deep it was until I'm older. And it was just it was just like, dang, it's just like a lot of stuff happened, and I realized thanks to you and other people like BGS and what's it called? OSHÉ was like the main link to all of you guys to me. But it was thanks to you guys. You guys put a lot of you guys really helped me out to understand. And my question really is like, how do I explain this stuff to my mother, for my brothers, and other women in my family? Because you're saying like, oh, the women with boys will understand. My mom got 4 boys and she still don't understand shit.
Let me put it this way. What I meant to say, if I didn't say it properly, was
wow, there must be some hot sauce or something. We just hit a siren.
Oh, that's my bad. My neighborhood.
I thought that was Ohio players, but go ahead, man.
Oh no, that's normal.
Okay.
What I was gonna say is, of the. Oh, you might have to mute for a second.
Yeah, mute up a little.
Yeah, my bad.
I was gonna say, of the women that I found are more apt to understand, they tend to be mothers of sons. So I'm not saying it's a guarantee that if she has sons, she will. I just find that overwhelmingly, when I've run across women that do understand, they tend to have sons. Usually there's an emotional tie to someone who is experiencing what we're talking about, and it's not something they can easily dismiss because someone they love is tied into it. Some of the most ardent, hardcore feminists that I've ever met are surrounded by nothing but women and girls. And I've met a few. I've even dated a few. Had all daughters. Mothers, girlfriends, sisters. They had no men in their lives, and tended to be the hardest, feminists you ever met, because there was no tie to anything that forced them to live outside of their experience, their comfort zone. So it tends to be, the women that have close ties with men, and there's a whole different level of empathy that comes when a woman is giving birth to a son, or at least the potential of it. But as far as the whole question of how you can convince them, the first thing I would say is you may not be able to. Sometimes the convincing is in the quality of your life. There are things that my mother did not understand until she saw how I'm living and how I've taken the things I talked about and applied them. You know what I mean? Got the doctorate, have a son that I'm raising, bought a house, X, Y, and Z. Sometimes some people who don't want to hear a word you have to say have to see the evidence of the value in your words They need to see it in the quality of life you develop for yourself. So some things you may be able to explain with data and argument, and some things you just have to live. And you'll find people coming back after 10 or 20 years saying, you know what? I see you. You know, sometimes it is that. Sad to say. You know, but
Thank you so much, sir. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Live well, brother. I mean, really, make decisions that put you in a position of security. And
or just one more thing is just like, it wasn't really for me because I already kind of figure out, like, you know, leaving out the country and everything, it'd just be better off. But it's really like for my little brothers, because I don't really want them to be stuck here without that much of, like, because I'm kind of even when their father is here, you know, I'm still basically the husband in the group, and like I have more, even he admits that I have more sway with her than he does and all this other stuff, and it's kind of, it's a hindrance.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting? I'll be brief with this. What I was just saying a moment ago, she may not understand these things we're talking about, but the fact that you have more sway to her, you know, than any other man. Why is that?
Oh, because I grew up with her my entire life, and I mean, because growing up, I'm a Jamaican, St. Vincent mutt, I call myself, but I've been with my Jamaican side, and me and her, our women is kind of rough. So it's just like when I was younger, when she used to wild out and stuff, and she thinks that she could really take me on, I had to put her back down. Like it's really kind of it's just stressful. It's really been like I really was a son husband all this time, and it's just like even my own little brothers admit to me like I've been more like a father to them than their own dad, and they look up to me like almost basically a father, and it's just like, yo, why do I have to go through this? Well, but it's just like the same time I love my little brother, so that's why I want them to be I'm worried about them.
Well, the thing is, the power that the son husband does have is because you are her son. And she's going to advocate for you. I mean, BGS used to talk about this years ago, where he would talk about a woman's nest, right? And the reason that her kids would always get more investment than any other man that's not in her nest. That's the power of the son husband. You do have power. It's just not overt. You are her child. She's going to give you more credit, more leeway, than most others, than anyone else, really. But
yeah, I'm the only one that can actually check her. When she try to pull stuff out, and I was just like, I pull out right the facts back out. I'm like, when she ever says something stupid like, what was it called? That phrase, like, I could take you in this world. I brought you into, I could take you out. I was like, I bring back the whole scene. Like, you should have kept your legs closed. I didn't ask to be here. And then she shut up. Like, because she be sometimes be saying some real deep, like some, mean stuff. So I was just like, I had to hit her with some brutal stuff to make her just shut up and reflect on, like, these are your actions. You caused them. I put it like this: you fucked up. My dad fucked up. Made a fucked up situation, and I'm your fuck up. So deal with all the fucking you're getting.
Well, and who else can say that to her?
Huh?
Who else can say that to her?
Nobody. That's just me.
Yeah, if you decide to have family counseling, I think you should go to a male therapist.
Right.
Yeah, because it sounds like y'all need to really come together with some counseling on that one.
Yeah, and that's what I'm like. Thanks to you, Dr. T. Hasan, because you explained the Jamaican history to me and how it got there. So it filled in all my hypotheses I made about like how we got to this point. Mm-hmm. So you just gave me all you just filled it in and clarified everything for me. And I know it's all in the side effect from what happened in Jamaica that spread on to the women here, like, the slavery and all this other stuff. Because I put it as like how you kind of said, like, basically what's happening to the Black community now, it already happened to the Jamaica, but without feminism. Mm-hmm. So, and now feminism is just hitting it. So it's just like, like thanks to you, like the American Black people, what I'm seeing is going on, it fit into like it was like the puzzle pieces fit in for me.
Yeah.
So and you were like the the other missing pieces. So I see what's going on. I kind of already have my clear for like I study it like I kind of look at them like lab rats in a way. So it's something good. It kind of helps me out mentally with all this stuff because I question it and I want to understand it so I don't pass it on to other people. Like if I want to start my own family. So.
And this is what this is what I dig about what you're saying, and I want brothers to get this. This shit didn't just happen. This is a product of policy. And I even get nationalists that'll tell me, well, you're not talking enough about white supremacy. Stop talking about women. I'm saying, no, you don't understand. I've never stopped talking about white supremacy. It's about policy, though. The whole use of policy to upend the Black community, to downplay the men and advance the women. It's a strategic, debilitating tactic that's used to undermine a given society. And the brother is so correct. It happened in Jamaica and it happened in the US, but it happened in slightly different ways. Feminism was one. Now, we've already had a gynocracy, but in the 60s and onward, it just reached another crescendo because of how policy embellished it further. Now, policy pushed it into place in the first place, even during slavery. Various policies that allowed for women to take on a certain relationship on the plantation, differing from how Black men were able to navigate, those are actually policy decisions too. But after the 60s, it took on a whole nother level. And feminism was the Trojan horse used to push that through. But in Jamaica, feminism comes later. If anything, feminism ends up adding to the matriarchy that already exists. But it's still using policy to create that dynamic. And that's what I want brothers to use. I want us to move past just the rage of having been on the receiving end of this bullshit, but do so with an understanding of how it happened. Now that we understand how it happens, what can we do to advance ourselves? That's why we're having this conversation about politics. That's how it was started.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate you coming through, Brother J. Moore. And on a lighter note, if you can remember this, there's two movies that'll probably get you cracking up: Throw Mama from the Train and Only the Lonely. I think you would die based on your situation if you see those movies. But thank you for coming, sir. Thank you. And then we got Ian Graves. He's the last one.
You guys stay blessed. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
You too. What's up, Ian?
Peace to the gods. Peace to the gods.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna check out Only the Lonely too. Again, that was hilarious. But go ahead, brother Ian.
That is an awesome picture you got up there, man. Who is that?
I don't know, man. It's some dude that's he teaches university courses and
It's looking good, man.
That's what I do.
That's tight.
Well, thank you, sir.
What's good with you, Ian? What's up, man?
Yeah, man. I've been living on Clubhouse, man. I've been living on them.
Oh man.
I think I heard you a few times.
Oh yeah?
I think I have. I think you're in some of the FBA adults type one conversation.
Yeah, I've been in a couple of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I heard you.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn the tide over there, man.
I heard that.
But over there though, they even got African. So I was in a room on Clubhouse where now the Africans are debating about misandry. There were actual African men with accents and everything on the continent talking about misandry.
Wow.
That's how far your shit has moved.
Were they? So, what was the tone of the conversation? Like, were they agreeing with it, or were they saying?
The room was actually kind of set up by the feminine African diasporic women, and they were upset that these more feminist types are attacking them for their positions and putting them out of room. So now, women who are kind of against feminism or the toxic because they didn't say they were fully against feminism, but these particular women said they were against the toxic misandry aspect of it, and they're saying that they're getting attacked frequently too as well, just as men. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a woman who opened the room, and then they had some men come in speaking on it too. But again, these were all African diasporic individuals, so they're having the conversation as well. Because truly, it is a lot of diasporic because the brother from Jamaica was saying that a lot of diasporic women are coming in heavy-handed with this shit, even above and beyond the black women here, and that's not necessarily been pointed out and addressed.
And I bet you they're college educated.
Of course.
Yeah, they're coming in with the rhetoric they're learning, and in terms of misandry and patriarchy. I'm sorry, misogyny and patriarchy. They're coming in with that, and I've witnessed this on college campuses for the last 30 years. I mean, I've seen it doesn't take really more than one class. You give a freshman young woman one class in women's studies that delves down into this whole kind of anti-patriarchy thing, and they wage war on men. And it's daunting because most cats who've never taken a gender class don't even know what she's talking about.
Right.
But
because they're talking about femicide.
Yes.
All these other things. I'm like, yo, but to be honest, I really can't say what's happening on the continent in terms of the gender dynamics over there. So I don't know. But the problem is that they don't speak on those dynamics over there. They're the diaspora, and if they're saying that these are problems, they never address actually what's going on over there. They're coming over here acting as if they actually are part and parcel of the history here of the dynamics, which they are not.
So do you have a question for Dr. T before we all head out, Brother Ian, or you just want to share that with us?
So Dr. T, because I hit you on the messenger, because I drapetomania, protest psychosis, and then I sent the article with the how they had a study where they were trying to connect actual patriarchy to terrorism in Africa. So that was my question. Is like, okay, can you go over a timeline or I guess kind of make a prognosis, because like I said, this stuff is going global. This thing, and so can you really kind of see where it might be going, especially where Andrew Tate got kicked off because he's talking about some kind of talking about these masculinist issues and things too.
Yeah, man. Look, where I go with it is I go back to Jim Sedanius, right? And when Jim Sedanius starts talking about the attack against males and the way that this is kind of framed, especially in regard to hold on one second. Dang it. Man, I'm sorry, I'm having a technical issue. Bear with me for one moment. Damn it. Damn it. I don't know what's happening with my whole. Okay. Anyway, sorry about that. But when Sedanius starts talking about the treatment of outgroup males, right? Subordinate male target hypothesis. The way he's framing that isn't along the lines of race. He's saying whenever you have two contesting groups and one dominates the other, it tends to be a male on male dynamic, right? You got the dominant males, you got the subordinate males who are being attacked. That applies to Africa as well, because they came out of a colonial experience while we were going through slavery. And in that colonial experience, even though it's not the same exact thing as slavery, there is still Sedanius's argument about the subordinate male target hypothesis. And even in the aftermath of formal colonialism, you still have a strong influence by those colonial states on their economies and how they function. And when you start looking at the ways in which these African women are going to Western schools and getting trained in Western gender ideology, it's not surprising that they're being trained to target the very males that the colonial project targeted. in the same kind of way. So even though it has a different historical trajectory in Africa and in other countries, it's not an accident that so many men from around the world, even in the comments section of this video, there are some brothers that were talking about the countries they're in right now, listening to this show. Right? You got brothers who are listening to this from around the world, and the reason they can identify with elements or so many elements of what we're talking about is because they're similar, not necessarily the same, but very similar to what they're going through. And we see it like, well, you got your own country, but they're still dealing with it because the concepts that Sidanius was referring to still apply. And so I think what you're saying is profound in the sense that when men start to respond, when Black men start to respond to their treatment and they're not taking it anymore, it's going to inspire men from around the world, especially Black men from around the world or men of African descent that still are grappling with the subordinate male experience. They're going to be inspired by this language. They're going to be inspired by what we're talking about and inspired by what we do. And they're going to apply it to their context. So in as much as feminism and misandry have become global practices, so too will the response to misandry become global, most particularly through YouTube. I mean, this media access is global. As long as somebody has a smartphone or some type of internet access, they can be here. Right. So the potential of that is ridiculous in terms, and this is why I think Nusel reached out to me, and he can speak for himself, but my impression is that there's so much on the table in terms of what can be done. Can we make sense of this and decide what we want to do? We have global reach right now.
Have you heard of and I always use this because it just in a roundabout way in a conversation, someone explained to me. I didn't read the book particularly, but it was explained to me, right, that Jomo Kenyatta was instrumental in the development of the Mau Mau, which helped overthrow the British, right? In Jomo Kenyatta, in his book, Facing Mount Kenya, he said that before that they were able to overcome the colonization, the British oppressors, they had to overcome matriarchy, right? And part of what they did in terms of overcoming the matriarchy, they stopped putting the women on a pedestal. And so the example that was given me from the brother who was explaining to me, basically an example would be like, okay, if a man needed a wife, he would just give a brother a wife, right? So he didn't have to necessarily qualify and go through these hoops and different things. So they stopped pedestalizing the females essentially, and they looked at females as just a natural part of life and not something that you had to earn in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and it stands to reason when you look like, so whether you're talking about a plantation or you're talking about a colonized country, right? This is why Sidanius is so important, because what he does is he shows you, and this could be two European groups fighting each other in Europe 500 years ago. It doesn't have to be about race per se, but what he says is for the group that is conquering the other, the advancement of the subordinate women is part and parcel to this process. There's a different relationship. If you look at a plantation, there's going to be a different relationship that black women have with the slave owners versus Black men. It's going to be a different relationship, right? Black women are able to secure a relationship with white men in positions of authority differently than we are, because we are at war in a very particular way. So the dynamics of this is what he points out, and it works across the world and across time in the same way. She will still be able to serve in a particular way the interests of the dominant male, be they sexual, be they reproductive. She's going to play a certain role that you can't play in that dynamic. So we already have different relationships with power. And so what you're describing is even amongst the Mau Mau, what you're describing is they had to take on a different relationship to how they saw their women, because the dynamic in place that Sidanius is explaining is what they have to respond to. As long as they keep, pedestalizing women, the women are used against them to keep them in a lowly position. Those women have access to the dominant society. They have access to resources. Now, mind you, those resources are diminished compared to theirs, but there's more access for those women, those subordinate women, than there are for subordinate men. And as long as that's the case, following subordinate women leaves you in a vulnerable position where you are controlled. So before we can actually oppose dominant men, we also have to do what you're describing and re-examine our relationship to our women. Because that's been a control mechanism. And see, that's the value of the manosphere, at least to the extent that this is the only place I can find other than Black male studies, which is a handful of scholars in the academy, literally a handful, where you can actually have this conversation. That's why I came to the manosphere, because you couldn't talk about this anywhere else without being, canceled. But the dynamic is real no matter where you go. If one group is dominating another, the sexual dynamics are unavoidable. So if that's the case, that's what we have to address.
And so let me ask this. Do you think that the reason that Kevin Samuels, so that being the case of these sexual dynamics being instrumental in overcoming the patriarchy, you think that's why Black women were so angry, right? That Kevin Samuels was changing the mating and dating strategies and kind of giving men a kind of an upper hand in that?
Well, yeah, I think he was dangerous for a couple reasons. Because one, he became the tip of the spear for a conversation that Black men were having that they couldn't control. That was one of the first things. The second thing is he was hitting them with logic, because what he did was he asked the basic question to women. Have you ever bothered to examine what the men you want? And they had never asked that question. They've never been asked that question before. They just told us what they wanted. But when Kevin actually gave voice, not to all men, but just to the men that those women wanted, they had to deal with competing for men, which gave, which really returned a sense of clarity to, what exactly men are and what they deserve. Because we were taught growing up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, the way we were raised, we were supposed to be almost a given. Right? Kevin used to joke about how women just would pick a good man off the good man tree. The idea was, no matter what you did to build yourself as a man, you were owed to a Black woman.
Yes. And there's so many movies that show that. Yeah, that's so.
Yeah. And it didn't matter if you liked her, if you were attracted, it didn't matter. I can't tell you when I would turn a woman down, how other women would be like, how dare you? She liked you. You were supposed to get with her. It didn't matter whether or not I was attracted to her. In their minds, I was just supposed to serve because she liked me. Right? I'm an object for her. And so there's been a sexual objectification of Black men for generations in the Black community that Black men have not had a language for explaining. Now, we can talk about sexual objectification of women. We have that language thanks to feminism. But those same feminists will turn around and say, Black men don't have any of sexual objectification. Like that doesn't happen to y'all. Y'all just need to shut up. You're just making up stuff. No, that is precisely what our history has been predicated on, not only in the Black community, but also in relation to white women. We were, you were used as a phallus for her pleasure and killed if you didn't want to provide that service.
Right.
That is the utmost in sexual objectification. So we've experienced this on multiple levels, but nobody regards our experience as real.
Right.
So when we start to actually talk to each other, and then Kevin being the tip of that spear in popular media, and then that's the thing, they couldn't control who was listening to his show. You couldn't just, he wasn't on NBC where you could just get rid of his show. He had a million plus subscribers that were tuning into him that they couldn't control, and he's telling them, no, this is what men are experiencing. This is what you're missing about this. And they couldn't control it. And truthfully speaking, as much as I don't like to say it, his death only martyred the message.
Yeah. He's partly what gave rise to Andrew Tate.
But at the end of the day, the message is out there. Now you have young men that don't have to live what we lived growing up, where we were taught we had no value. We were taught to pedestalize women, and we were taught that, that would just be the way it was indefinitely. That's the way I used to think. I just assumed at some point I was going to marry some woman that had a couple kids and just be a stepfather, and that was it. I just assumed that would happen. I never heard of sexual marketplace value. I didn't know that there was an ebb and flow to whether or not men would be considered attractive or not attractive. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand the dynamics. I didn't know there were dynamics to understand. I just thought the way it was when I was a young man, where we're all chasing beautiful women and they had the control of which men got to be with her. I thought that's always the way it would be.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, because when I was in elementary school, middle school, we all wanted the girl, the cute girl. She was dating someone in high school.
Mm-hmm.
All the high school guys, they wanted the cute girl. She was dating somebody in college.
Mm-hmm.
And in college, we wanted the beautiful woman, but she was dating a grown man that had his own business and owned his own house. We were living in dorms. We all, I didn't know that changed at a certain age. That changed when the dynamics changed. I thought it was always supposed to be like that.
Right.
When Kevin voiced that there are more subtleties and nuances to this dynamic that play out across class, across race, across geography, across occupation, he opened the door. Now, I'm not saying that everything he did was perfect or any of that, but I'm saying he opened the door to questions that we never were told we could ask.
Mm.
And he let people know that there were more answers behind that door, even if he didn't give them. There were other things that we could learn. Scared the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And now you got young men they're actually trying to create policy. There are schools that are trying to criminalize young men in the hallways talking about manosphere talking points.
Oh, really?
Yes. They are trying to actually punish young men in K through 12 who are having manosphere conversations at school, not in the classroom, in the playgrounds, in the hallways. They're trying to find ways in different schools to punish them for that. That's where they're going with this, because they can't control it. And these young men are figuring out, wait a minute, I have value? Huh. Okay.
Word.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So I appreciate you coming up here, Brother Ian Graves, and we went way above our time. I appreciate Dr. T giving us our wisdom and time, and any thing you wanted to end it off on, Dr. T?
Nah, man, I'm sorry I went so long, but shout out to Ian. He's been a long time supporter. I love that brother. Hope he's well out there, causing trouble where he is. I want to thank you, Nusel, for having me up here, man. And the artwork is dope. I'm gonna have to holler at you about how I can get hold of that.
Yeah. I need to see about. Hey, can you? Oh yeah, shit. You ain't finna print that. You ain't finna print that.
It's up to the guest. It's up to him.
Hey, what's up to me? What's up?
Because he's talking about printing it.
Hey, man. I'm good with it. I just want a copy. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, yeah, print it. Give him the original. Print it. If you can print one, I'll hit you on the Cash App to get one.
Okay, so you're going to put that up there with Martin and Jesus and JFK?
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
He gonna be the next Nobel Prize. He gonna share it with Dr. Curry though. He gonna
Nah, man, I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
Well, appreciate it. Looking forward to doing more projects, and hope a lot of people took a lot from this, and so now we all gotta do our family duties now. So shout out to Admiral Smoke, my frat, James Kills, Indigo Flow, Hood Conservative. He came in with the eyes. Don't forget my partner in crime, Shonda H. Let's see, Brother Rodney. Oh, I'm sorry. He's Abuki Cabal, right? Spain Man. And I think it was Blue Fig, KP, and from KC 5. Aaron Peters, Reynolds, Asada, that's my other partner in crime, Asada Muhammad, Valeri Kurmu, Charles Merchant. Let's see, Most High Amory. I think I got everybody. It's your boy. Aquateki again, A.L. Evans in the building. Appreciate you coming through. And I think I'm there with J Mar and all of them. So I think I got everybody. But don't forget, we have the Manosphere channel of the week. And then also we have BGS's Behind the Wall going on as we speak. So wherever you guys want to go. Oh, we got Sister Shirley in the building. Right? So anyhow, you guys stay blessed and see you guys on Tuesday. So peace and hair grease.
Peace.